want everyone dodging those bullets!
Valkyria Chronicles really is one of the games of all time. In this video, I'll play through the whole game to give my mission-by-mission commentary on its design, story, and how it went for me in particular, stopping regularly to deliver my thoughts on many topics TM in a series of rambling asides. Valkyria Chronicles is a turn-based strategy game with third-person action elements and even puzzle elements, yet it can still surprise you, just you wait and see. Before we begin, let me say that Valkyria Chronicles is a very uninfluential game, and in this commentary I hope to convince you that this is a problem for the world of turn-based strategy games. You see, back in the mythical day, I liked playing XCOM, a rival turn-based squad shooter, you could say. Then I played Valkyria Chronicles, and XCOM aged 30 years in a day. The spell was broken. Valkyria Chronicles, for all its flaws, provides a directly analogous yet better take on the classic turn-based tactics approach, I will claim. Since then, I've been waiting for XCOM and the like to catch up. They never did. No one ever did. Valkyria Chronicles' core systems are quite simple and could be used in loads of turn-based tactics designs, but this has slipped under the radar. In fact, it's a moot point because XCOM died out, despite massive commercial success and being relatively easy to develop compared to most genres, and that's the reason. So here I'm going to take you through Valkyria Chronicles. We'll see how it handles turn-based combat with unrivaled skill, but that's not to say it's actually good TM. Through my commentary and topic asides, I hope to demonstrate that it's all at the very least better than the genre standard, with the important caveat that I think the genre standard is stuck in 1995 and people mock it even when they like it, me included. If you're new here, you'll soon find Olympic-level fence-sitting arguments like these are my favourite. I like Valkyria Chronicles, but I understand it's technically bad in a load of ways. I'll dump on those ways as we play, don't you worry. I'll be attempting an all A-rank playthrough, which is the best way to showcase the worst the game has to offer and how broken it is, and with all that said, let the commentary begin. The game begins with a montage of shots, an overture giving you a taste of what is to come. It does a good job of showing off the anime action with a signature pencil sketch filter, the game's unique aesthetic. However, I must say the overture contains spoilers that penetrate right to the end of the game if you look too closely, so I'm going to whiz on by. We'll see everything in detail soon enough. Next we have a cutscene to introduce the setting, the Second European War between the Federation and the Empire. We'll return to some of the details here for a later topic discussion. All we need to know for now is that there's a big war on over control of Ragnite, which is oil, but it's also magic, so it's even more useful. Gallia, our setting, is a small, neutral country with a load of Ragnite and a liberal policy about conscripting child soldiers to defend that Ragnite were someone to try and take it. Valkyria Chronicles is about to begin. You can ignore most of Europa, it doesn't feature in the game. You only fight inside Gallia, and you only fight against the Empire, or almost only against the Empire I should say. Our dreaded foe, yes, the Empire, the Eastern superpower. If you know me, I would usually complain here that the enemy faction is just called the Empire, but they're actually not called that in the lore. It's the East European Imperial Alliance. That passes the don't call your factions the noun test, and that's one off-ED point in the bag. We learn almost nothing about what the Empire is or what Gallia is. It's not deemed important enough to discuss. We just have to fight those guys. They are, in the pure axiomatic sense, the enemy. Our story begins with Welkin, a biology nerd returning home from university. He strolls into his rural, idyllic hometown of Brule, right on the eastern border with the Empire. But drama strikes when his interest in taking notes on the local fish makes him look like a spy, and he gets arrested. The one with the gun is none other than Alicia, the game's de facto protagonist, in mechanical terms at the very least, and we'll get to that. Topic: who is the protagonist? Considering protagonists, it's worth noting that while Welkin is the official protagonist, the game is actually all told from the point of view of a news reporter, Irene Koller née Ellet. She appears in the game and is also the narrator. She is the author of the game's framing device, a book called On the Gallian Front. The cutscenes are presented as visualizations of you, the player, reading On the Gallian Front. So that means, if you want to get fancy, you can take this as a sign of unreliable narration. The story of Valkyria Chronicles is a journalist's take on what they either saw or deduced from interviews with the cast. And we can use this as a criticism shield, can't we? Because everything that's unrealistic or contrived, we can say, that's because in-universe, the cutscenes are visual depictions of Irene's historical novel about the war. Let's not freak out too much over this imaginary narrative conceit yet. Before being executed for drawing a fish, which Alicia thinks is some imperial code that surely reveals the details of all of Bruhl's extensive garrison. Spoilers, it's just Alicia and a couple more low-poly goons with strange hats. Welkin's sister comes and saves the day. This is Isara, an underutilized character who suddenly becomes very utilized at a certain point, if you know you know.
Huh?
Alicia vaguely knows Isara and takes her word for it that Welkin isn't a spy, thus the drama is over. Now, for reasons I will mention in a bit, I think they were all supposed to have a scene where they got to know each other a little here, but there's no time, as a combat tutorial is barreling towards us, and to facilitate that, the Empire is suddenly invading. Yes, they're just there in the adjoining field all of a sudden. And we know they mean business because they start killing random passers-by for no reason. They must be the baddies. Welkin gets roped into fighting them with no questions asked by anyone, grabbing a dead guy's rifle and getting stuck right in without a thought for his own safety or indeed Isara's. Such is the absent theme of personal motivation or even personal feelings in a time of war. There's a rant brewing here for later. We're going into the tutorial here with some easy combat. I'll skip over introducing the combat myself because it's very nothingy right here. We'll look at it in the next mission instead. We killed those guys, and now we hear Elit's take on this, in which she spoils the game immediately by saying that this is the story of how Gallia wins the war for all intents and purposes. I guess we knew we would win because we're the good guys, but we might as well hold on to a little tension, eh? Activating shield. In this universe, this is in a book about historical events that everyone already knew about, so it's okay and consistent for this book to contain spoilers for itself. Yes, I will be covering and coping about all of the game's problems with this level of dedication. Let's go see what the next one is. Between each scene, you come back to this book, and you can look closely at the text and see it appears in places to say something. Sometimes you can make out text about Valkyria, the Atlantic Federation, and stuff about Ragnite and chemistry. Other times it appears to say, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." It's not 100% random or lorem ipsum filler characters. There's probably a great secret in the deep lore hidden here somewhere in the book. Now let's have some tonal whiplash. Our three characters go for a walk in town. It's a sunny day, blue skies, pleasant music is playing. Welkin is enjoying his old rural town's charming atmosphere. Did we just kill several people minutes ago? Did we witness the residents of this town being indiscriminately killed by an invading empire? This is where it feels like this sequence was supposed to be the moments before the invasion, before that first battle, not the previous moments we saw. Maybe it used to be like that, but they adjusted things to throw in an extra tutorial. Welkin and Isara go home and meet with their pregnant housemaid. I think both their parents are long dead. They're from a rich military family with great national prestige after unspecified antics in the First European War, and they live in this mansion outside of town, a mansion to which Alicia soon shows up with some free bread, as an apology for the whole "I thought you were a spy" thing. She might be the leader of the nation's only line of defense against invasion, apparently, and somehow, and there might be an invasion happening right now, but she's got time for this. I think the three guys we killed were scouts, and we assume that there'll probably be some great period of time before any more show up after that, so we can chat and flirt with bread and all that good stuff. When we tell the maid Martha we were almost executed as a spy, and almost killed by enemy scouts, who we then killed and left unburied in the field out back, Martha says,
"Arrested and shot at? You've had a busy day of it, haven't you, Welkies?"
So there's your tone for the game. This game has the most naive tonal presentation of warfare, which lends it its weird feel that helps you get whiplash when it suddenly doesn't do this now and again. More importantly, I said Alicia was flirting with the bread, but she officially isn't. Alicia pre-friendzones Welkin with absolutely no mercy whatsoever. Didn't we bond over those people we killed this morning, Alicia? Not quite enough, but there's time for that. The intro already spoiled that this is a love story, so it'll probably happen. Alicia finds out that Isara and Welkin aren't blood related, which actually, if you want to get really annoying, brings up an already gaping plot hole. Topic: the characters should know each other already. The opening of the game requires that Alicia doesn't know the Gunther family very well, but she should know them. And yes, I'm going to complain about this of all the many things in the universe one can use their voice to say. Firstly, Welkin and Alicia should know each other because they're roughly the same age, so growing up in a small town they almost certainly went to at least some of their schools together or otherwise had met. That is my claim, and further to this claim, them hanging out and ignoring their duties in the early scenes makes marginally more sense if they knew each other already at least, or knew each other 10 years ago. Childhood friends anime trope goes here. Alicia should also know Welkin because his father is the most famous man in town, a former high-ranking general, and their household is perhaps of importance to national security. As a cop/soldier, Alicia should perhaps already be planning to evacuate the Gunthers specifically, and should know all the members of the household. Gaming sins snark counter goes here, we're getting really pedantic right now. Finally, she should also know that Isara isn't Welkin's biological sister, for the aforementioned reasons, but also because Isara is supposed to be recognizably of a different ethnicity to Welkin, meaning that even if Alicia didn't know her, which she actually does in the presented plot, but never mind that, she should know she is adopted. Isara being ethnically different to everyone else actually comes up a lot in the game, so this is less of a pointless thing to say than you might imagine. You're watching Offie D's Game Grounds. If you like the tonal naivety the game uses to portray war, you're probably going to like the upcoming racism plotlines as well, so stick around for that. Therefore, Alicia's behaviour in the opening of Valkyria Chronicles constitutes the largest plot hole in all of fiction. I'll never let them get away with it. Our implausible strangers to lovers arc couple end up going for a pleasant walk in town. We learn the town is mostly evacuated because tensions are rising with the Empire. That's one way of putting it. Remember when the Empire shot and killed several civilians and that town watch guy you were hanging out with this morning, Alicia? Pretty tense situation. As tense as it is, Welkin says he doesn't really want to join the army. There is an expectation that he will, because his father was a famous general from the last time this happened. Yes, it's the Second European War, remember? But it's not a World War II analogy, I assure you, evidence pending. Welkin would rather be a teacher due to his passion for biology, and he says he wants to give back to the country in his own way. Wow, that's deep, Alicia says. She ponders it and seems to be on the verge of realizing that it isn't deep, but we are interrupted by an explosion, my favorite writing technique. It's supposed to be artillery, although it's portrayed as a meteorite falling down. This world, broadly speaking, doesn't have artillery or long-ranged weaponry, so that's one of the only times you'll see an attack like this, handily enough. Yes, our little date distracted us from the fact the Empire are not only attacking, they're just a block away. They're in the town centre right now. Were we supposed to be stopping them? Well, we see civilians getting gunned down, and then Welkin's like, oh no, the mill.
The mill.
The real casualty was that the windmill collapsed. Forget being thrown into the meat grinder, we should be more worried about the wheat grinder, he should say, into the camera, crowd laughter. The "That's So Welkin" theme starts playing. Should've let me write this. Well, someone comes over and says, there's a war on and stuff. So the three of us pull rifles from our inventories and decide to storm the town's central plaza to take it back from the Empire. More deep lore, you can see one of the roads is named after Welkin's father. More evidence that Alicia should probably have known who he is. Looks like I might actually have to talk about the gameplay now. You'll see I win this battle with ease, in a strange looking way. And before we can commentate on anything, we need to dive into how the game is supposed to work. Topic: how the game works, turn-based tactics, and what matters. Here's the introductory point. It's turn-based tactics, and you can make a certain number of moves per turn, indicated by the command point badges at the top. We have 3 badges and 3 characters, but do not be fooled. You can use these command points in any way you wish, including taking 3 actions with the same character. That's the first step this game takes to overcoming the 1995 anchor point of the turn-based tactics genre. It massively multiplies the number of things you can do with your turn, and opens up all kinds of weird tactics that ruin the game in many ways, tactics that will seem like exploits, but are actually the developer-intended way to play, and when you realize that, you begin to understand why Valkyria Chronicles lost its way, mechanically speaking. I'll try and convince you of this sort of thing later, but the main point is visible in this early mission. While there are loads of enemies in front of us, the best strategy is to run wildly up the middle of the road to complete the objective, that being to kill the guy in red armor back here. Valkyria Chronicles is a game where only the objective matters, and you're given vast leeway in how crazily you do it. That leeway is partially that it's quite hard to die. The only reason to kill enemies is to make it so you're less likely to die while doing an objective. And in most cases, it's a waste of your turn to kill an enemy, especially because of the concept of interception fire, which allows you to kill enemies outside of your turn for free. That's what we saw just now with Welkin getting shot at while taking his turn. It's just like Overwatch in XCOM, but better. That's also why, during the enemy turn, we can see Alicia shooting a tank with our standard issue BB guns, doing absolutely nothing. You can probably already tell that real-time and turn-based elements are blending together, and that's where the finesse and frustration both enter the picture, in this broken, but still better than the rest I claim sort of way. It's what the game expects you to do with this cool battle system that really starts to expose the vein of criticism that gets thrown around a lot with quite a few of the missions in this game. The short version of this criticism is that the best way to play is to skip everything, and it feels kinda dumb sometimes. Your money and EXP rewards for battles are almost entirely based on your rank, like you get an A, B or C grade, and your rank is entirely based on the speed of completion and absolutely nothing else. That one sentence of design is where the game breaks down for some and stops being a turn-based tactics game at all. It's more like puzzle tactics, where you look at a stage and you ask, how little of this can I do? I'll be showcasing ways to do very little indeed, making the game much easier and more rewarding in the literal sense, in that the game rewards you more for playing in such maverick ways and skipping as much content as possible. You can say, well, just ignore the ranking system then if you don't like it, but your progression through the level up system, we'll see in a bit, is tied to ranking. You actually need to do this stuff, or otherwise you'll face a slow grind elsewhere to make up your grade, so to speak. This decision is make or break for the game design. When I first played this game years ago, I thought they were insane for doing it like this. It was really dumb feeling. When you play it, it's just so weird. It's immersion shattering too. It all feels really bad. It's unexpected, it's dissonant, it's unfun. But I got to the point when I thought, well, even though that's true, I really like the puzzle aspect it brings out by just letting go of any sense of immersion and trying to play by the game's rules. You can see the game they were going for here, and it is actually good to some extent, in its own way. And before Alicia realizes that's not as deep as it sounds like it is, we'd better move on. I'm just coping here, but I'll try and give you a sense of why it can be fun to think of nothing but speed in the missions to come. You just have to disengage your brain, which is always a good sign when trying to praise a game. I'll shoot for all of the A rank goals and, well, let's see me get one right now. To A rank this mission, all you need to do is ignore absolutely everything and run Welkin to the right side of the map, and it just ends. Boom. Didn't play the game, didn't follow the laws of the world or plot, just didn't do anything, we skipped. Easy mode if you don't shoot at enemies, because they can't shoot back. Like, there are counterattacks in the game, a la Fire Emblem or similar turn-based tactics designs. So it's a mandatory speedrun game, or if you like, a mandatory low turn count game. A boon for fans of the turn-based tactics low turn count run scene, which is very much a thing. But if you saw what I just did there and thought, well, what was that? then you're probably going to have some trouble getting into the real developer-intended way to play Valkyria Chronicles. That's not to say you can't play it the normal and perhaps more fun way, but the game will be dumping on you for doing that, and it makes the game harder basically if you try to have more fun, which is a little bit strange. Again, I'm going to keep coping and keep attempting to claim that this is all somehow a good idea. Now, I promised you some racism, so let's bring that in. Back at Welkin's house, Isara is being held up by some Imperials, who, unlike Alicia, notice she is a Darkson. All we can glean about that word for now is that it means there's something to be discriminated against here, and while you might think, oh, it's like the Empire are racist, like in World War II. But it isn't really. The shared culture of the world all hate the Darkson, for the same mythical reason. More on that later. The standoff is interrupted when Welkin comes in and beats one guy to death with the post of a white picket fence, which could be interpreted as a shattering of idyllic family life. Oh, isn't the war terrible? Isara shot the other guy, and there you have it. 2 dead guys in the kitchen, more might be on the way, and Martha, the maid, is having her baby literally right now. How can we get out of this? Well, the good news is Isara secretly has a tank in the garage, so we can escape in that. Even better, Isara took the tank engineering course at school and can operate it. And Welkin took Armored Warfare 101, so is a qualified tank commander / gunner. That's handy. It mentions in a moment that Gallia is doing the Armed Neutrality National Focus. Everyone has to pick some kind of military training at school. Even Isara, who's only 16, and that's the high end of the child soldier age range Gallia usually goes for. You will be trained for combat from childhood. Very useful for what's going to happen pretty soon in the overall plot of Gallia's war. So we slap Martha in the back of this bad boy, and while we could escape, we did also say to Alicia we'd help her in the battle for the town, so hospital or safety can wait. We got to get back in there and take out the enemy armor. You've probably noticed the unshakable confidence and resolve in our characters. It's nice, but probably open to criticism. You would expect there to be an arc, where they're afraid of combat in the beginning and get less so by the end. It's going to be more like they are utterly confident of victory the whole time. They don't see the danger, they don't feel the fear, which is another aspect of the tonal naivety I'm flagging. We probably can win the war with this tank we found in the garage, so I'll get my little sister to drive, I'll handle the turret, and we go and save the nation. As if war is like a sports game, where all we have to do is say, let's give it our all, team. Yes, I'm essentially advocating for Valkyria Chronicles, but it should be Band of Brothers, it should be ultra gritty, but still with the anime trope characters, creating this huge tonal and stylistic mess that will itself be what makes this a great work of art. We'll see a little bit of that stuff later, if you know you know, so let's hold on. Back in town, Alicia and her goons are holding a gate by the main road. But the Empire have a tank, so we won't be able to hold it for long. We're going to have to move out with Alicia and start just absolutely slaughtering the entire Imperial army while we wait for Welkin to show up, and it's all simple enough. Topic: How combat works, part 2, and is it actually innovative, really? We're not only using multiple moves per turn on the same character, but as you might have noticed, if you're able to perceive things, when you take an action with your character, you control how they take their turn in a third-person action sort of way, and it plays out in this semi-real-time, dream state timey-wimey fashion, in which time only moves when you do. And because it's your turn, only you can move. However, everyone else is allowed to shoot at you, so long as you aren't aiming. That's the interconnected rule set that I believe is known as the Blitz system on the turn-based game design scene. And this weird setup is the one I think other franchises need to steal ASAP as step 1 for advancing the genre. But wait a minute, if we use our imaginations, this is a lot like me ordering Alicia to run forwards to a given square and then shoot at an enemy or use a grenade from a top-down view. This is basically the same gameplay as something like XCOM, right? It's just the camera that's different. Isn't the player's apparent contribution to this process an illusion? This could have been just menu-based, like in the 1995 Anchor Point. So what's the big deal, you philosophers ask me? Well, Yes, technically aiming the gun is just putting the mouse over the enemy, which is the same as clicking on the enemy to target them in the text-adventure style, just pick an option type game feel I'm supposedly complaining about, and I think this would all be true without the fact that precise positioning can matter in a way that only a ground-level camera lets you appreciate, and more importantly, you are vulnerable while inputting actions in the Blitz system. And the game is pretty harsh about this too. One wrong step and you can die. The precise details of how you move and when you shoot and at whom do matter, as well as line of sight really mattering. That's the other massive difference from the text-adventure world. Here, line of sight is literal, there's no interpretation whatsoever. If you can see some cover, you can use that as cover. And if you've played XCOM, you might know that what can see what and what can shoot what, well, is a whole abstract world of potential frustration. Here, the simple rules create this extra gameplay layer between you picking your move and achieving your move, which not only makes the game more gamey, TM, it makes the conceit of turn-based tactics less stupid. Even though I'm being facetious about the time mechanics as usual, it's better than the everyone takes one action per turn and stares at each other in between standard of the genre. When the enemy runs at you, you don't have to watch your troops ignoring them, and it doesn't look weird because it's all just an abstraction of what the game rules are supposed to really be. Your soldiers see the enemy and they fire at them. They're always in Overwatch, because that's how human interaction with the world, in the broadest possible sense, works. So it just makes more sense for the game to work like this. Therefore, this arbitrary-seeming selection of rules produces a version of turn-based squad combat that is similar to the XCOM-y grid of soldiers frozen in time approach, giving the same gameplay ultimately. But it's both more involved and fun to play, and less frustrating, and less luck-based, less weird. And if you know this game well, you'll also know how many asterisks I'm going to have to put on all of those claims I just made. So let's wait and see what those qualifications will end up being. As the battle progresses, Welkin shows up in our tank, the Edelweiss. The Edelweiss is a powerful unit you have in most missions, but it comes with the downside that it can't move very far, and it costs 2 command points to use it. In practice, 2 moves with an infantryman will do more than 1 with a tank. So you'll mostly only see the Edelweiss when it's mandatory. It's also hideously inaccurate, but I need to discuss the concept of accuracy in a separate rant, so ignore that for now. Most tanks have this glowing weak spot you can hit for massive damage. That's the radiator on their Ragnite engines, implying that losing your radiator means the engine goes supernova. This Ragnite stuff is pretty dangerous, and that fact will come in useful in many ways as we go on. Oh, and Martha had her kid during the battle. That went fine. We didn't have to bring a pregnant woman to the front line. I suppose there might have been somewhere we could have stashed her until we were sure we weren't going to be shot by an anti-tank gun or something. Well, it's a story for Martha, isn't it? Oh, arrested and shot in one day. Oh, reminds me of the time I gave birth while loading anti-tank shells during a desperate bout of urban warfare, lying next to this engine that gets so hot that if its heatsink gets destroyed, it explodes immediately. What crazy antics we get up to here in Old Town Brule. That's the end of the tutorial, and the real concept of the game will now begin. The transition into the real game happens very quickly, and without fanfare, making me suspect it was designed totally separately to the opening sequence and then they were bolted together. By which I mean, Valkyria Chronicles is a game about an army unit. But we aren't in the army. We talked about how we totally didn't plan to join the army. How this situation changes isn't really shown in the game, so allow me to cover this rushed transition with another rant. Topic: it's not anime World War II, asterisk. Based on what we've seen so far, the phrase anime World War II seems to fit the bill here, right? I want to argue otherwise, to waste everyone's time. I'll begin by having you note the map of Europa. Europa, huh? Oh, that place. From World War II, you ask. I'm going to somehow claim that it isn't really that analogous, even though all the sea names are literally the same as in real life, including the English Channel, despite there not being a place called England. Did Napoleon win, actually? Was it all just a dream? That's not a bad suggestion, actually, if you look closely at the map. from place names and indeed cutscenes featuring people from other nations. We know that Europa has a shared language and probably a shared culture. That's Exhibit A in the "This isn't supposed to be a World War II analogy" thesis I shall present. There aren't even accent differences if you want to be really pedantic. Gallia, the Empire, and the Federation all speak this Franco-German looking language, with places in the west and east of the map having the exact same names if you look way too closely, as I have. It's all Luxembourg. European geopolitics is three entities fighting over a single culture, a single nation in the social sense rather than the nation-state sense. There is a reason why the setting is like this in the lore, so we'll get to that later. It doesn't sound, though, an awful lot like World War II, but maybe there are wars that have a setting like this. Keep that in mind. And while I'm here, let me clear up something in case anyone made the mistake I did the first time around. On the map of Europa, you might kind of think the Empire is Russia, this East European alliance, right? But the Adriatic Sea is right in the middle of the Empire's territory, and there's no Baltic Sea analogue. We're not that far east. The East European Imperial Alliance is basically Germany, Poland, Austria, Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia. So how's that? It's not World War II point coming along, Devin. No comment. Basically, if you go by seas, Gallia is supposed to be the Benelux region, even though it looks like the Baltics at first, with that coastline and Russia-looking blob of land to the east. It really was Luxembourg all along. Maybe it's Denmark or something. The only other place in the world that is ever mentioned is the Scandinavian region, said to be north of this map, as you might guess. And we'll learn about what antics they've gotten up to later on in the deep lore. Let's start the game for real at last. As Irene very briefly mentions, everyone got conscripted after the war started, and the next scene is Welkin in his new, very swanky office in the capital, as he's already been promoted to lieutenant. Basically, my complaint here is that there's this massive moment in the lives of our characters that happens between those scenes, where someone comes and conscripts them, and you could show their reaction to that happening. This is an important character moment in your arc, and yes, I'm going to continue critiquing Valkyria Chronicles as if it were supposed to be a literary work, because I love you. Welkin has a moment with Alicia, who handily got conscripted into the same unit, so we can keep flirting. She's trying on her uniform. Do I look okay? She asks, holding the world's biggest fishing rod. Will Welkin take the bait? No, he won't. He says she wears it like a pro, whatever that means, and that she looks like a beetle, a particular one he insists is the king of beetles. He doesn't seem to notice that Alicia is disappointed or offended by this description, and the romance only deepens. Alicia is determined to like Welkin, luckily enough, and she manages to take it as a compliment. Speaking on your special interests without taking other people's interests into account is the future. It's the best. You are very much and very unfortunately watching Offie D's Game Grounds. You are all Alicia Melchiot, king of the Beatles. We meet our company leader, Varot, who'll be around a fair bit in the game. Also conscripted was Faldio, Welkin's friend from university, and he also gets promoted to lieutenant immediately. Alicia notably doesn't get promoted, despite being invited to the same meeting. Yes, if you went to university, you get instantly promoted, even though we studied biology and Faldio archaeology, whereas Alicia actually has experience leading a military unit and was giving us the orders back on the front line. Well, that's how Welkin officially became the protagonist in a strategy game, basically. He was just chosen by the system. The only other thing I'll say is that Faldio is voiced by the guy who does Kaz, Why Are We Still Here Just to Suffer, Miller, and I found this very distracting in every scene he appears in. And he turns out to be the secret third protagonist of the game, really. He's a sort of Chekhov's character, where we've got this extra named character in the sidelines to bring in for when the main cast are committed but the plot isn't advancing. We can reveal our secret extra character. Here at headquarters, we can do the big two things to improve our prospects in the war: get better equipment and train your classes. I won't show much of this, so let me dump all of my pain about these systems into one giant topic rant, then I'll skip over them for the rest of the commentary. Except for the other topic rants I have planned about them, because I just remembered I'm lying, because it's OffiD's Game Grounds, rant, 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 go! Topic: equipment upgrades and level ups are rubbish. Buying equipment upgrades is trash, really. They flubbed this one because you get enough money to buy everything in the game the nanosecond it becomes available. So there's no decision gameplay. The gameplay is just, can you be bothered to press enter on all of the boxes to say, yes, I'll have this upgrade? It really needs a buy all button. Or just don't even give you money between stages, just have everything unlock on its own with progress. Which even makes a little more narrative sense. Why does Welkin have to spend his own money buying guns for the soldiers? This is like when school teachers have to spend their own money to buy pencils and stuff. Gallia supposedly is really rich because it's a Saudi Arabia-style Ragnite economy. That's why we're being invaded. Why do they have to make the conscripts pay for sharper bullets, or however we're able to make our rifles do plus 5% damage? Which brings me to a more hinged point. Upgrades in the game are small. It tends to be 1 to 5% increases in damage. But in a game where you usually kill in only a few hits, all that matters is getting past a breakpoint to kill something in one fewer shot. So while you will get like 10 rifle damage upgrades, there will be something like 2 or 3 that actually have an effect on the gameplay. The rest are intermediate stages to reach those breakpoints. There isn't really a quick way around this balancing-wise other than doing something with overkill damage, but that's a whole mine of game design discussion that applies to basically every game ever, so I'll skip it right now. I am merciful sometimes, you know. There are some upgrades you can eventually grab which let your weapons apply debuffs, and these are technically overpowered, for a reason I might rant about at a quiet moment later on. There are also upgrades for the Edelweiss which are actually useful, since the tank is mandatory in some missions, and it does suck unless you upgrade it enough to be able to shoot straight. But I said I'd leave accuracy ranting for another time, so just rest assured for now, I bought everything I needed. As for training, by spending EXP, you level up your soldiers by class rather than as individuals, which is very handy because it means it doesn't matter if people die. Their replacements inherit their experience points. The main thing you might notice is that the game doesn't actually say what leveling up does. It just gives you a level up screen and leaves you with the meta assumption that it's useful. Basic mistake here, just say what it does. No excuse, like it's only less fun if you don't say what leveling up does. You just left fun on the table right there. That said, leveling up doesn't actually do very much if you look behind the scenes. I did see the numbers somewhere on the internet. And you have roughly double HP at max level versus min level. And you get small increases to movement range and accuracy. But it's really coming through this special bounce at level 11, where most of the overall leveling up benefit comes at this one point in the curve in particular. So while you can level up 20 times, it's more like 19 small level ups and one big one in the middle, and you only really need that big one. You can also unlock potentials and orders via the leveling system, and that will prove to be more important than the levels themselves. As for what potentials and orders are, we'll see soon enough. An important thing to mention with both equipment and squad leveling is that the enemy also get this, so you don't get any advantage for these improvements, you just tread water. I would love them to go the other way with this, where the enemy aren't leveling alongside you. But the challenge instead comes from there being more of them, or new enemy types. I mean, there's so much to say in that direction on that topic that I'm just not even going to go there. So merciful today. For the rest of the campaign, I will just buy all the gear, I'll get all the level ups, but it mostly doesn't matter, I claim. Except for when it does, and I'll point that out. Can't argue with that, can you? Moving on through the HQ, it's now time to draft our team for the big game. You're handed a platoon and told to pick 20 to be the active portion. I don't know why they do this, because nothing happens to the ones you don't pick. There's this multi-menu tiered system where in battle, you pick 8 to 10 squad members to fight. From this list of 20, it's asking me to compile now, but your squad actually has 40 people in it. Only you have to come to this menu to move them from a reserve list to the active list between battles, if you want to bring them into your squad list in a fight. But there are no penalties, there are no mechanics linked to this, it's just different menus on different screens. I think they wanted you to commit to something and make choices, which we'll go over in a second, but because there's no downside for just changing your decision at any time, you might as well not make this a separate menu altogether. Well anyway, here's a real question. Does it matter who you pick for your squad here? It should matter. They did make mechanics so that it technically does, but it just doesn't really. While all members of a class are interchangeable, they do have different potentials. Potentials are buffs and debuffs that have a certain chance to be applied under certain conditions, sometimes requiring you to be a certain level, and they do certain things. All that is terribly communicated in-game. You might think that was a very vague description, but I gave you more info than the game does right there. I don't think it tells you the chances for potentials to trigger, or that they are chance-based at all. I don't think it tells you what the debuff or buff for each potential does, or at least more specifically, it doesn't tell you the numbers attached to it, that is. It just tells you the condition for a potential to trigger, and in battle it will tell you if it has triggered, but it won't tell you what it did, and you just sit there wondering what it all means. In principle, you can slog back to this screen before each mission and change the roster of 20 so that it has more people with useful potentials for a given mission. There's a real chance that everything you do here will have no gameplay effect because it's all nebulous RNG. So, the long story short of the draft for now is that you should probably just take your waifus and not agonize over who has good potentials and possible synergies with each other like I did. It doesn't matter. There's more to say though about squad choices, but since I want to move on, I'll consign that to a future rant. Let's instead jump to the first real mission of the game, the battle for Vasel. Gallia already lost most of its stuff, and we must now defend the capital by pushing out to nearby Vasel, where the main bridge the Empire will use to get to the capital region is located. The real army already lost it, but now we've got a meaty stack of conscripts to throw in, so we'll see if we can get it back. The first Vasel mission really only involves capturing a little foothold on the west bank. We don't even capture our end of the bridge here. For this one, I really wasn't playing with the just do the objective mindset, because there is a problem. Playing the game for real is kind of fun. It's kind of fun to take out the enemy in front of you and think about the new options this opens up, or position yourself for interception fire during enemy movement. That's the game instructs you to play, but it's not the game it wants you to play or rewards you for playing. This is the core problem with Valkyria Chronicles overall from a mechanical point of view. And I'll complain about it more fully later, so just a taste for now here. You can see me taking this pointless shot with an AT guy against a distant tank, misses by a mile. We didn't need to take that shot, I'm just spending command points doing things that don't advance the mission all over the place. Maybe I just wanted to see what would happen, or I was thinking like, yeah, let's kill that tank somehow, but that's not the mission. The mission is capture the flag. This is an important mission structure that repeats, so let's think about this. There are two things that can stop you capturing a flag. One, if the enemy is standing below it, this mechanically blocks you from taking it. And two, if the amount of interception fire you'll take in moving to the flag will kill you, then that stops you, I guess. So we have to kill any enemies achieving one, anyone under the flag, and we need to kill or distract or displace enemies who might achieve thing 2 there. Any enemy that won't block your path or won't kill you during your run past them should be ignored entirely. That's the play. That's the developer intended play. I'm starting to lean into this here with this run forward with Shock Trooper Vice. If you're wondering, yes, it's Vice from JRPG Skies of Arcadia. I believe the game shares a director with this one or something, maybe Sega owns both. It's probably not copyright infringement. Vice got shot 10 billion times just now, and he's fine. That's the leeway I talked about, the ease. Little stops you moving to just do the objective in many cases, allowing you to skip loads of more difficult content. I also stopped midway through this to kill this named character who totally isn't in our way. It's not too pointless. Killing named characters is helpful in a way we'll discuss later. Back to Vice. I kill the soldiers below the flag easily and capture it, ending the stage. Nothing else I did mattered, but I only got a B rank. That tells us the game expects you to complete this on the first turn, because that was the second turn, and only turn count matters. Therefore, I reloaded a save and tried again. There is no native way to restart a stage, unfortunately. You're not meant to be experimenting and save scumming or grinding for better ranks. It's a game of transitions and unskippable animations that makes replaying a stage really tedious, more tedious than it needs to be. But we're doing it anyway to make a point here. Attempt 2, we're just going to kill enemies according to my 2 rules. First, we snipe the guy standing near our starting point so we can go through the alleyway behind him. We run up the alley, shoot the guy standing there, since we're out of movement and might as well. Then the subtlety, there is a guy on the roof to the right who will shoot at those who run to the objective. I need to save some health, so I'm going to switch to our second team on the other side of the building. You just run Alicia up to a ladder that will place her behind the guy on the roof I want to kill. She kills him immediately, and with that, we're now free to do the same thing I did last time with Vice. We'll take 2 more actions with him to clear the base, ignore all the bullets hitting him because we know it's not enough to kill us. He can just do it on his own and we complete the mission on the first turn with command points to spare indeed. Boom. That was way easier than actually playing the stage. I mean, the enemy were literally locked in a time freeze. They didn't get to move at all during that battle, that's handy. Fewer turns means less risk. There are things the enemy can do to one-shot you, like with tank shells or well-placed sniper headshots. So the name of the game is skip, skip, skip. If you're finding the game hard, try doing the thing the game implies is the hardest and gives you the most reward for. Turns out it's easier than playing the game normally. But it's also less fun and more stupid, and that's the problem with Valkyria Chronicles just overall. All you gotta do is run to the end zone and get the touchdown. Go team. Topic: permadeath. It's worth mentioning that there is a kind of permadeath in this game. I say kind of because if you start assuming what permadeath means mechanically, you'll probably get it wrong. Let me lay out what the stakes actually are. If you die in the game, you die in real life. No, that wasn't it. If you die in battle, you die outside of battle. That's the starting point. That pool of 40 guys and gals the government scraped from a barrel and plopped in your office, you can lose them forever, or lose most of them forever. The only thing stopping this from being a problem is that one guy can get shot 10,000 times without dying, as you might have noticed already. Whereas the enemy can be mowed down before you, so normally you aren't going to get too hurt by gunfire. And I was saying before that your characters have this unshakable confidence. The mechanics of the game back this up, don't they? Because yes, you really can survive getting shot millions of times. There's not that much to fear in this war, as it turns out. But if you do manage to run out of HP, you won't die, you become wounded. And then any character can touch you to decide your fate. If an enemy touches you, you die. If an ally touches you, you respawn in the squad roster and can be deployed again at full health, not only in the next battle, but in the next turn of the current battle. It's incredibly generous, to the point of sometimes giving you a death warp, like dying and respawning at a forward base costs fewer CP than moving there. This is even lore accurate, as a part of the reason Ragnite is so magic is that it can completely heal almost any injury immediately. That's handy. All your soldiers carry Ragnite vials to restore HP, and they can be used indefinitely. It doesn't even consume Ragnite to heal your wounds somehow. Very special. Only your medic, though, has the big one that brings you back from the dead, essentially. That's a pretty decent ludonarrative resonance. There is a reason why it's so forgiving. But also, you can die if the enemy drag your corpse off, essentially. However, keep in mind, the game will absolutely pretend you are not immortal in this way for most of the plot. So we'll still get to say ludonarrative dissonance again soon, kids, don't you worry. The final point to mention is that Alicia, Rosie and Largo, your 3 sergeants, are 100% immortal. They get returned to your squad even if the enemy capture their corpse, because they have this kind of plot armor which we call budget constraints. Want a permadeath game but you don't want to change the plot or cutscenes based on who is alive? Then any character who appears in the story can't die. Bang. Problem solved with only a few lines of code. It means permadeath is diluted, and it means you never get to interact with any character that can actually die, which kills any hope of getting to know your squad, a la Fire Emblem Three Houses, things like that. It's bad, but it is the easy way out. The even easier way out is not having permadeath, and I believe the other Valkyria Chronicles games went there in the end. So the stakes are a little bit high. Your fave, your waifu, can be lost forever. If you lose all of the recruits, I believe the game will just give you some more, only they are faceless goons with no names. Combined with all of the soldiers of a class being de facto interchangeable, the game really doesn't want to softlock you with permadeath. The permadeath mechanics are as watered down as they can possibly be. They're just technically still there, clinging on. So don't let your waifu get shot too much. That's advice for life right there. Mizelet is here in town, the reporter responsible for the pile of lies that is this game, looking for scoops. Remember 100 years ago when people said scoops? It was a brighter time, if somewhat desaturated. More importantly, in the aftermath of our first victory in battle, there's a problem. People found out that our tank driver is a Darkson. Enter the recurring theme of the game, Isara getting bullied for being a Darkson, and no one really caring. Rosie, one of our NCOs, is complaining about the Darksons causing the Darkson calamity. An apocalypse in ancient times that is the original sin of the Darkson people in the racism law of Europa. They didn't actually do whatever this was, by the way, but we'll find out more about it later. People believe something happened, and that's good enough for army work. Rosie's argument is that if Isara drives the tank, the world might be destroyed, ... And Isara generally can't be trusted. The other NCO, Largo, is generally of the same mind and also doesn't want inexperienced Welkin to be the lieutenant, so any excuse to dump on them sounds good. They basically threaten a mutiny. They've probably crossed a line where the military can now execute them, but Welkin bravely steps in, and he says, "Oh yeah? Well, if I win this next battle, you have to shut up about all this." Notably, he doesn't defend Isara, or even try to suggest that Rosie is wrong for getting mad at her general existence. His only hope is something like, maybe pulling off a crazy mission will bring the squad together, and then they'll be less racist. So he begins a master plan, which we'll see in a second. There will be some more scenes like this. They wanted to have this overcoming racism arc, but the problem is nobody cares enough. It's more like racism is so ingrained and normal in this setting that it never really crosses a threshold where being racist is less rude than telling someone to stop being rude. So Welkin's heroic position just becomes, my driver might be a filthy Untermensch, but you still have to follow my orders anyway. I suppose we technically never established that Welkin even likes Isara. I'm kind of assuming he would defend her, but not necessarily. Well, it is 1935 after all. This could all just be a stunningly deep portrayal of social interactions in a segregated society, or maybe it's just accidentally stumbling around in scenes about racism with the same softness as the game stumbles into its scenes about being conscripted to fight in a war. So what was Welkin's master plan? It's a cool idea, which will be dropped in the chapter after this one, I think, so enjoy it while it lasts. Welkin uses his biology training to come up with something no one else would consider. He noticed plants on the ground indicate the river isn't very deep in certain places, and it's possible to semi-ford it with the Edelweiss. Isara somehow makes the thing airtight, and together they drive underwater to make a surprise attack on the other side of the bridge, avoiding the massive army implied to be at the bridgehead on the west bank. We'll bring the rest of the squad in by boat amid some mist, and it's time for battle. Oh, but not before we go all the way back to the HQ in the capital to upgrade things. Yes, you can ludo-narratively dissonate yourself to your heart's content, because your HQ exists in this pocket dimension in Welkin's mind, so you can go there whenever you like. Would it be annoying to not let you go there during story moments that imply it would be impossible, or during operations in general? Maybe not really that annoying, actually. I think it would add more weight to the HQ upgrades. If you didn't know when you would next be back there to get more. Right now, it's really abstract. I even fought a different battle after landing on the east bank of the Vasel, but before the east bank of the Vasel mission. using some dissonance magic. Yes, you can grind out mini-battles while outside of story missions, including during story sequences when this should be impossible. I didn't really do this very much actually, and I had my reasons for that, which I'll get to much later on. All I'll say about these skirmishes for now is that they're stupid in the same way that the main missions are stupid, only more so in many cases. You just run to the end and skip everything and don't do those missions, but you still get the experience. That's the whole deal there. Back to the front lines. We've got to take this bridge. It's a capture the flag mission, so again we need to think about our rules for what might stop us doing that and focus on those things. However, I not only didn't think about that very well, but I missed a fairly big secret that is hinted at in the game. We'll see this later. There's something that makes this mission easier. We're going to move Oscar here to climb a tower and look at the map we need to get through. It's covered in enemy tanks, but also in barrels of unstable Ragnite fuel that will blow up and mostly kill a fair few of the tanks if you were to spend your command points on such things. But should we? That's the question. What you need to ask yourself is, can a tank stop me running at the flag, which is only technically blocked by 2 infantry right at the end? We can test this a little over here by having Alicia run up to shoot this guy beside a tank, getting hit a load of times by the tank's MG. It looks like we only have a few steps before death, so maybe we can't run right across the face of many tanks guarding the way forward. But do we need to? More on that soon. First, I'm going to try and kill this tank using Largo, our insubordinate NCO. The problem with Largo is that he's a Lancer. Topic: Lancers. Boo! You might think, if this guy is supposed to be an anti-tank soldier, why does he have a lance? It's because the game started doing something cool with this idea and then stopped right before the logical extension. So let's have some Lancer hate. Why do Lancers suck? Number 1, they can't move very far, meaning you often waste a command point by picking them because you can't move into range of anything. Number 2, they are hideously inaccurate. Even Largo, who's supposed to be this expert in wielding these weird anti-tank lances. And number 3, they can't intercept enemies, so they don't get extra value during enemy turns. And then biggest of all, number 4, while they made the weapons look like and be called lances, you can't melee attack with them. The implication is that a lancer would be a guy covered in armor who literally runs up to tanks and jabs the lance into it. Then there's some sort of shaped charge on the top that explodes into the hole the lance jab makes to spread shrapnel inside the tank, and that's how it kills them off. Or at least that could be an alternate mode of operation. I think it's a fair trade-off for Lancers having no interception, that they should have loads of movement, perhaps only in a straight line, like a charge if you like, which can melee kill infantry and tanks alike, but then leaves them in a potentially vulnerable position since you have to leave cover to do this and you end up behind enemy lines. That sounds like a very reasonable way of doing this to me. The design of this class makes me think that someone else out there was thinking of it being something like that, but then settled for them just being really big RPG launchers instead. Broadly speaking, you need to avoid having to use a Lancer, which means you need to think of ways to not bother killing tanks. That's a key principle of being a high achiever in this game. Enemy turn. Alicia's dead. Game over? No. Death matters less than you think in a permadeath game, as I said. She will be fine. Actually, I ended up restarting the mission to have more focus on moving forward and getting sniped a bit less, and bringing Largo up a bit more, as I foolishly thought I would need him. Check out Oscar getting sniped by a tank here. That's the sort of sudden problem that can happen, and it's RNG based, but I still can't bring myself to reveal or admit how RNG heavy the game is, because that will ruin my theories about how this is the best game design ever and stuff, so let's brush over it until a better moment. My plan is to kill the tank facing the junction I need to use to make a beeline for the flag. That's what Largo is up to out there. And I already spent a move blowing up the barrels with Oscar, RIP. Oh, it's just a flesh wound from an anti-tank shell direct hit. He'll be fine. But there are 2 things I missed here. You can run around the rubble to the right of that tank and go behind it, so you don't need to kill it at all. And you can destroy a wall on the left side of that road, which means you don't have to go out to that junction at all. You can actually run from your spawn point to the flag in almost a straight line if you blow up that wall. I didn't discover this until a return to this map much later, so we might yet see this further in the future. Long story short here, I did it wrong, but not wrong enough. I was able to run my favourite 2-scout team of Alicia and Frisia to the flag, girls on tour, second brat war, don't mind the gore, and we get the A rank for a 2-turn finish. Ignoring fewer enemies than was possible, although I don't know if you can actually do it in 1 turn, maybe you can. I've shamed my entire bloodline, and not only for saying second brat war just now, so we'll be back to this mission later for another look at why the secret route might become necessary were you to play the game under slightly different circumstances. Something bad's going to happen, and on the topic of bad, let's rant. Who is the bad guy, and why should we fight them? 2 scenes of Imperials committing murders in and around Brule are the main attempts the game makes at establishing the Empire as bad guys in the war, aside from the fact they invaded in the first place, I should say, which is rude at a minimum. Broadly speaking though, neither side in the war is explicitly presented as good in terms of their conduct or beliefs, or anything you might expect in a heroes and villains story really. Gallia is only good implicitly because they are quote-unquote us. We don't learn much of what our characters think about Gallia as a nation. Only whatever Gallia is, they are steadfastly loyal to it. Everyone will agree Gallia must be defended. Gallian identity and nationalism is so baked into the Gallians that it becomes invisible, as in it literally goes without saying, which is inconvenient for us looking in on the story because we just don't get to hear anything about it. I think I'm looking for some nerdy, ideological reason to fight to be brought up, but it's really more like, well, they invaded us, that's mean, I'll do anything to punish them, aka I must defend my home. But ideally, for a real drama, you want individual character motivations outside of this unspoken sense of duty. I want to ask of each character, what goal of theirs does the Empire obstruct? What problem does the Empire represent, perhaps? Or more cynically, what did Gallia ever do for them? I'm trying to reach for some ethereal criticism of the game very desperately here. I suppose you would expect it to be like, well, they're a tyrannical dictatorship and we're the spotless democracy. Something like that. You know, like in World War II, or perhaps a more distant historical war, which I'll get to later. They're not doing anything like that. It's a very apolitical war in explicit terms. It's us versus them. They started it, so we deserve to win. That's about as far as the game's going to go. But you can read some politics into that very lack of context, a lack of context for the intense loyalty the cast feel for Gallia and its semi-feudal, monarchical society. We don't know what they think about it, but they definitely will risk their lives to defend it. It will turn out that the main 2 motivations for most characters are A, I feel I must do this, and B, I got conscripted into a war, and I suppose I'll be executed if I don't do this, and that's all we ever needed really. I think the low-hanging fruit I want them to grab here would be like, oh, the Empire are going to kill us if we don't stop them. Like, that's a really obvious and easy motivation that already makes sense with what they started doing. They just don't carry on with that, and the characters never discuss this being a risk or that it motivates them at all. I guess the even lower-hanging fruit is they should throw in, oh, and the Empire killed your dog. And that will be enough to override all my concerns about character motivation here. Now for some more amazing tone whipping and anti-heroism from our characters. The Vasel stage ends with Asara capturing the control room for the bridge. The Imperial forces on the West Bank were crossing the bridge to join this battle, but now the bridge is raised, killing loads of them, and it's implied this leads to Vasel being recaptured as a whole. We did it. Alicia mentions that now Largo and Rosie have to uphold their agreement to listen to Welkin, which may or may not include not being racist, at least towards Asara. Largo says okay, Rosie says she'll never like those stinking dark hairs being the not very offensive sounding slur among the anti-Darkson crowd. Asara dejectedly says she's used to it and doesn't fight back. That's pretty much how all the racism scenes are gonna go. Welkin is revealed to be in the conversation, notably not saying anything. He's prodded to comment by Ellet. Will he show compassion for the Darksons, getting dumped on by the racists even as they serve Gallia heroically? Will he show compassion for the company of soldiers they just drowned in the river moments ago? Those are two virtuous hero moments you could put in the story here pretty easily, but instead he says that bridges are cool, and he hopes to be like a bridge, connecting people together. At least a bridge between his sister and people who hate her so they can bully her more efficiently. It's all going well. I feel like I once saw part of the Japanese dub of this game, and Welkin came across more serious, like he was trying to deliberately stay optimistic, and that's why he was saying these weird things. It was less like he's completely oblivious or is just ignoring these problems that should be affecting him or concerning him in some way. I don't know. Let's just move swiftly on because that's what the game does. We're suddenly in the Cloden Wildwood in the southeast to destroy an Imperial supply base that is secretly supporting the invasion. At least that's what we talk about doing. But I actually stumbled upon something very important that will change the course of the rest of this campaign. I realized that if you press the turn page button while looking at the skirmish menu in the book, you can turn the page to reveal the special skirmishes. These are challenge stages that are extra hard, and they're available from the beginning of the game for some reason. I believe they are free LC included with the PC port of the game. They're supposed to be post-game content. However, if you can somehow achieve victory in them in the early game, you can grab loads of money and EXP, and if you're really sneaky, something even more juicy. So let's take a look at this. The most important one by far is the Scout Challenge, the first one. Mainly because it's plausible to complete this without any late game characters. That's because it's a relatively simple mission where you have to find and kill some hidden scouts across a small map, and an early game scout can kill a late game scout. Plus the enemy are essentially hiding or patrolling set areas. They don't aggro onto you or try to kill you very hard. The main challenge at first is realizing that if you don't kill a certain scout standing near your base, he will go and take it at some point, probably right away, failing the mission. The other challenge will actually be finding the enemies, but we'll get to that. After restarting and killing the guy who captures your base, we're free to sneak around and single out enemies to kill them. If they're lying down, we use grenades to attack, which mostly kills them and makes them stand up, which removes the massive defense buff you get for being prone. It's all doable, especially because you can infinitely heal, and for your first completion of this challenge, you don't need to worry about how long it takes. The only thing that really matters is this guy, Oswald the Gold. This is an ace scout with double HP, and he is carrying what is probably the best weapon in the game. That makes him hard to kill, but the weapon is yours if you do it, and that's what we really want to get out of this. It's not even that ludonarratively dissonant, is it? Because the game said, we're going to attack someplace in some woods, and here we are, in some woods. We can imagine this happened on the way, if you like. There is only one problem. Alicia cannot kill Oswald the Gold, as our bullets bounce harmlessly off his solid gold head. Then he turns around, and even though we have that massive buff from being prone, the weapon he has doesn't care about that one bit, and Alicia gets turned into compost. So how are we supposed to achieve anything here? Turns out that while this mission is framed as a sneaky scout challenge, you don't have to do it like that at all. You can spend your early turns spending command points to call in different characters. Therefore, we return to the action with Rosie now on point. Her low movement means this takes forever, but you can move her to the sweet spot behind Oswald and unload on him. He still doesn't die, but the prone bonus, plus shock trooper resistance to gunfire, plus Rosie having way more health than Alicia, means we don't die either. Then, Montley, some snivelling punk from the scout team, slides in from the other direction and swats Oswald down. It is done. Or is it? We still have to complete the mission. And here's the real challenge, knowing where the enemies even are. I spent a long time on this part. Here's one, hidden near the start actually, which best girl Frisia finds soon enough. Then I spent a good while scouting the bejesus out of this map and scouring every blade of grass where the enemies can hide, and found nothing. I got mad enough that I decided it was a glitch and went to the internet, where I learned the truth. There is one patch of grass that isn't marked on the map, right up against the map boundary in the top right, also concealed by a rock. If you run all the way up there, there is one additional loser to kill hiding in the corner. They nearly stopped me, but we did it. The challenge is done. We even got a B rank, despite the massive time wasting. Very generous of them, like clearly the rules are very lax for this stage. we get loads of useless cash, loads of less useless experience points, and the extremely useful ZM-Car8-G. Topic: I love the ZM-Car8-G. The ZM-Car8G, let's call it, was never supposed to be in this game, and it shows. Rifles are supposed to fire 5 shots per mag. This one gets 7, because the magazine is shaped like a number 7, probably. Each shot does more damage than the best rifles you can find or unlock anywhere in the game, and by more, I mean like 5 times more than the basic Gallia 2s we use at the moment. It's really good, with the caveat that it's got short range and less accuracy, which never really matters in practice. Yes, 5 times more damage, there's the breakpoint I was looking for. Most enemies will die in 1 mag from this for the entire game. Plus it has some anti-armor uses. It's able to kill light tanks in 1 mag, medium and heavy tanks in 2 mags, if you get point blank up against their radiator, that is. We're going to break this game, ladies and gentlemen. The Scout Challenge can be repeated infinitely to get more ZM-Car8Gs if you want to obliterate the enemy. It's a cheat mode, it's hideous, but I can't resist. In the beginning, I was actively limiting myself. I only did it twice and got 2 of these weapons, to avoid obliterating the balance completely, but the spoiler here is that 2 ZM-Car8Gs is enough to obliterate the balance completely. By the end of the campaign, I had like 5 of them, and I even gave them out to engineers sometimes who will never fire them, just because the sight of a ZM-Car8G makes life worth living. Using this weapon will mean certain crazy strats where you run through the level and kill only the final enemy or 2 will be easier. And killing enemies will take 1 or even 2 command points fewer now and again, thanks to how good this rifle is. You can do very similar strategies without it, as I recall. I have played this game normally at one distant point in the past, but what we'll do here is just take the unbalanced weapon and then complain about it the whole time, even though I had the option of not doing it, because complaining is fun. That's why I'm here, .mp3. I wanted to try more of the challenges, not actually to get the gear or level up anymore, but because they're interesting puzzles that are much harder than the base game. However, they can be too hard, which brings me to the Shock Trooper challenge. Here it's a DPS check. The enemy will try to run past you, and if you can't kill them, you lose pretty much instantly. You have to have Rosie positioned in one of the spots, which means you have to have Shock Troopers leveled and equipped to the point of 1 mag killing endgame enemies, and we're nowhere close to that. I tried loads of different approaches and tried it again and again throughout the campaign. Maybe we'll see it again if I get anywhere with this one. Next I tried the Sniper Challenge, and this one is different. Different because we can deploy Alicia and Frisia with the ZM cars to be able to kill enemies, and this is essential. This challenge is just to kill all the enemies, but you can't go to the south side of the map. You lose if any enemies are able to reach the base across the valley, meaning you need to be able to kill enemies with interception fire as they run past you once again, but at a decent range and with decent reliability, and the ZM car on a scout can actually do that here. Then, even though our snipers suck in terms of accuracy and damage, we can gradually start clearing out the map shot by shot, not worrying about getting a good rating for now. Like with the scout stage, we need to find an ace and kill them to grab the special weapon for the stage. This one is right beside your spawn point, hiding in the corner. I found him while looking for someone else, then did some incredibly inaccurate shooting that somehow still gets a kill, thanks to the ZM-Car8's ludicrous power. I might get a t-shirt with ZM-Car8G on it and walk around until someone comments on it. I can't wait. We nearly lose the stage because an enemy runs right for the fail line while I'm out of position. However, they stop and crouch right beside it instead of heading in, saving my bacon, so thanks to the AI for that one. It's a slow stage because only some of the enemy will aggro. Most of them hang out at the south end of the map until you find them and kill them from afar. This is the Sniper Challenge after all. And with how bad our snipers are, it's really RNG heavy, shooting time after time until we finally get what we need. This would be the ideal time to talk about RNG and accuracy, but for some reason I really don't want to. I think it's because it will spoil my mood, so let's put it off even more. This mission took ages to finish because once again there's a barely visible guy hiding behind a rock in the background you have to deal with. I can just about hit him with this shot that requires the right RNG and a prayer that the level collision boxes perfectly align with their models. And we do get it after a couple of tries. Boom, another challenge down. C rank, how embarrassing, but we do get the special post-game sniper rifle. I don't really use snipers so much, so I guess this doesn't really matter, but it's extremely powerful. It one-shots enemies from across the map if you want to. But remember, killing enemies is usually a waste of command points, so a sniper rifle is surprisingly unhelpful. That's part of the reason these challenges are interesting. Killing all the enemies on a map as the objective is a totally different game mode to the usual Valkyria Chronicles fare. It opens up a game design door I'm planning to rant about during the next mission, so hang on a moment for this one. Yes, I am finally going to advance. I'm not going to do the other challenges, for reasons I will explain way later on. We're in Chapter 5 now, and it begins with the Imperial officers getting mad about us winning the previous battle at Vasel. The main guy is all like, snivelling insects, it is birthright that wins battles, being as knobby as possible. And you might think it's characterizing the Empire as bad guys again, but not really. Your officers also act like this towards you in the rare cases where you see the real Gallian military. Real as in not conscripted militia like us, we peasants. We also meet Maximilian, the unusually softly spoken villain of the game. He's the one pushing for the Empire to invade Gallia, we suppose, although he isn't actually the leader of the Empire, and if I recall, we never learn who the leader of the Empire is, because it's that unimportant. Max here is a prince of their royal family, and he's very interested in Valkyria. What even is a Valkyria, you might ask? Something about which a chronicle was once written, a chronicle of dubious accuracy, and we'll unravel all of that later. For now, all we need to know is they plan to reinforce the very place Welkin and company just got shipped off to, so there's probably going to be a battle or something in this game very soon. Now we have the second and final instance of Welkin using his superpowers as a biology nerd to save the day. Our squad got lost in the woods and can't find the enemy supply base. But then Welkin spots a significant clue: goat feces. He's quick to grab them and pile it up in Alicia's hands. And after some debate about whether that was necessary, spoilers, it wasn't, Welkin declares that if goats come through this part of the forest, then there must be a trail to the enemy supply base in a certain direction. Does this logic follow? Well, I'm no biologist, so I'll have to defer to Welkin's expertise here. To quote the ancient sages of strategy, "Poop of goat, enemy close. Where goats crap, you must attack." Sun Tzu, more like Sun Pu. And the tone dives further because we also discover a flying pig in the forest, which we capture for some reason and decide to adopt as a squad mascot of sorts. I almost forgot about this happening because, well, I think you do see this guy again at least once at some point in the game, just this random throwaway point that happened. This is a Japanese game, so it's kind of like a mechanical scare when you see the pig enter the frame and you think, oh god, the pig's going to become like the main character or something. It's going to become some essential mechanic. But no, they're going to stay slightly grounded in a literal sense by not having a flying pig. Although I don't think those wings are large enough for the pig to fly, you know? Maybe it was only a baby flying pig. I suppose for lore accuracy, we have to see adult flying pigs in the sky during missions to establish this is a species in the universe, don't we? Maybe it's all just supposed to be a when pigs fly idiom reference, but I feel it's more likely to just be some kawaii desine ashir, to use the professional media analysis term. Enough of this, back to killing people. We end up standing right in front of the enemy's regional base just somehow, and if we change the flag inside, we'll win, so let's get moving. I'll briefly tell you how this stage goes. Then I want to rant about something which will be my main message I want to deliver about this game as a whole. At last, we're getting to something here. First off, we're dealing with 3 enemy bases in the forest. As the smallest, on the northern side of the lake here, has this anti-tank gun you'll want to take out to allow the Edelweiss to get to the second base on the south side. Or do you want that? Hold that thought. The only other thing to mention is that when you reach the third base, the enemy spawns a massive invincible tank sitting right in front of the victory flag. This makes life very hard, and while it's possible to survive running through its machine gun fire, the way the gaps between the buildings are blocked by random items means you have to take a certain route to get to the flag, and that route is guarded by a couple of hidden soldiers who obliterate you right as it seems you've made it to safety. The answer to all of this is that there is a moderately obvious way to enter the enemy's base from the rear, right beside the flag, which makes the tank spawn not in your way. That's the solution. So that's what I'll be doing now. I'm going to probe our options for getting there and find the best way of attacking via that route. But what I won't be doing is anything else. Let's talk about that. Topic: I wish I could actually play this game. These stages promise a lot more than they deliver, because this setup here, with multiple bases and anti-tank guns to take out, 2 squads advancing in different places, helping each other out, that concept doesn't apply. That's not what the game quote-unquote wants you to do, and that sucks. Now, I am being a bit cynical here and causing the problem I'm going to commentate on, because all I'm doing in the stage is trying to find a way to skip it, because that gives you the highest reward. But I want to highlight how different the game could have been, because it was in this mission that I felt really disappointed by my own decision to attempt to skip the stage. I think the combat system really isn't built around a capture the flag base goal, and indeed all the missions that aren't capture the flag make so much more sense. They're more like games, and we'll see some of those later. I think I'm saying that none of them should be like this, or that capturing the flag should be a multi-stage process. That would either mean you can't attack the main base until you take the sub-bases, forcing you to fight across the map and meaning you use more than 2 or 3 characters for everything, forcing you to play the game that someone designed here. But then someone else came in and said, actually, let's add this road down the side of the map that lets you skip everything, and then punish the player for not skipping everything if they ignore it. Another simpler way would be to make all of the capture the flag missions force you to capture all of the flags and hold them simultaneously, such that you're doing defense and offense at the same time with different characters in different places. Despite the name, the Blitz system of mechanics is well suited to a slow and grindy battle, I claim. And I'm going to test that claim later in a way that will probably undermine my current argument actually, more on that towards the end. This is a game where you can look out across the map and think, I need to kill this guy with that guy, letting me move here, letting me do this, letting me do that. I'll need a tank to overwatch this corner. I'll need the engineer to run a certain route to re-ammo the lancers. I need a scout to go up a tower and see if someone's coming down that trench. All these possible thoughts you can have. You can begin to start thinking about the game in some sort of way. If only your objectives were different. If only you weren't always just looking for an exploit. But realistically, we're going to be seeing a whole load of just run to the end gameplay, and you'll see it gets even worse at times, and we'll eventually start to develop a technique that I call the ICBM, or Inter-Camp Bulletproof Melchiot, where you can use certain spells, certain magical techniques, to make Alicia complete a load of the story missions, and I think all of the skirmish missions on her own, with minimal risks. And in Cloden here, we're already starting to see such things in action. I'll also note though my pain is partially caused by using the ZM-Car8G, my one true love, as it makes exploits easier. But I claim to you that even with vanilla weaponry, these exploits are all intended, they're fully doable, sometimes just costing an extra command point here and there to pull off. It's not a huge difference. You'll tend to throw grenades to kill enemies instead of shooting them, or even just to move them off capture points and then run past them with the blast. I vaguely remember doing this when I played this game back in the proverbial day. Valkyria Chronicles, it's better than I make it look, at least it could be, that's what I want to claim. I'm disappointed at how much fun gets left on the table if you start engaging with this puzzle side of the game, but then the puzzle side is also fun in its own way. Just hearing Cloden, I felt it really stretching. I felt the call of playing a tactical squad-based shooter instead, seeing all the things I would have done if I was allowed to care about all of that aspect of the game, if I was allowed to care about whether there was an anti-tank gun watching a certain road, killing it would unlock a certain route for me to do this thing later, blah 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 blah. No, none of that's happening, and I'm going to rant about this topic a bit more later. Back to the commentary. Our girls on tour swept victory from under the enemy's noses once again. The dialogue erroneously claims that we took the base, but the enemy had already retreated, because this is a sort of you win, you lose story beat, the JRPG classic, where the plot requires that we don't achieve our mission, as it turns out, so it just pretends you didn't. The enemy kept their supplies, and the army coming to get them didn't engage us, leaving us in a precarious situation. But we'll call it a victory. We'll take my delicious A rank and a huge cash prize right to the bank. I think the enemy retreated all the way to the border, and we just returned to base, so nothing happened as a result of this little strange you win, you lose situation. A big mistake from the Empire. I only had like 2 gals, maybe 3. They probably could have won if they didn't care that there was a Gallian flag flying in their base. The anime does it better, guys, but I'll talk more about that later. Another victory for video game logic. Then I wasted a load of time trying the Shock Trooper challenge again and broadly failing. Even if I had good enough luck to survive for a while, inevitably at some point an enemy would run past Rosie in the corner. She just can't kill a Shock Trooper with 1 mag, so we're still doomed. There are ways around this, such as having someone else there like Vice, who got permakilled in this case, or using debuff weapons, which I'll get to later. So we're screwed for now. I should mention that you can permadie, even in these infinitely repeatable skirmish stages. They're sort of canon in that regard, so Vice dying there was a problem. However, if you fail the stage overall, you get game overed and sent back to before the mission happens. So there is a built-in way there of reversing a permadeath, even without save scumming, via some game over scumming instead. Very handy. I also tried the Lancer challenge, and the less said about that the better. I'll just be using that as B-roll throughout the video, as you might have seen already actually. Let's slide on into the next mission. We're in the desert. Yes, Gallia has a desert. It's not just a typical video game biome geography nonsense thing going on here. This desert was created artificially by the dreaded Darkson, or so Rosie claims. We're introduced to the Darkson calamity. This is the reason why everyone hates the Darkson. Legend has it at some point in the distant past, they used some magic or weapons or something to destroy a large part of Europa, leaving these wastelands covered in scars and holes from the mighty battles of old. And by some good old-fashioned racism logic, if someone who was a Darkson did a bad thing ever, we should bully Isara now. It's only fair. It's mentioned that Isara thinks there's no historical evidence such things happened, Isara herself being absent from the scene despite her plot relevance, a nice wasted opportunity, especially because the tank she lives in is also in the scene. We'll see the real story of the Darkson calamity a little later. Our hero Welkin doesn't weigh in at all, being focused on the business of the day. That business is to find some Imperials supposedly sneaking around in the desert. And indeed, there are some out there. It's time for a battle. This is another mission that rubs your face in how fun the game could be, if only you ignored the ranking system. It's this long expanse with great sightlines for snipers and even a special deployment zone to place snipers above the battlefield. But remember, shooting enemies is a waste of command points. It's a trick. It's there to get you to do something irrelevant. As is the series of trenches and bases that create these natural phase lines you could gradually bring your whole force up to. No, you just need to run a scout up the edge of the map. It's a capture the flag stage. I wasted a load of points doing other things. I was tricked. I was tempted by the allure of progressing the stage in a tactical sort of way, but deep in my heart I knew that scout rushing was the answer. So I had the girls on tour out there ready to go. Then I got very unlucky in that Alicia gets hit by 2 anti-tank shells, enough to kill her. That's unlucky because tanks are incredibly inaccurate, as that tank was really far away. For some reason, regular tank shells don't have explosive or splash damage. They're basically big rifles, and it makes their inaccuracy into a huge weakness. I would have been in big trouble if this Lancer rocket hit Frisia here too, as they usually kill scouts in one hit, but Lancers are just as bad as tanks a lot of the time. We live and will be able to skip the rest of the stage from here, so while I do that, it's time to finally face the facts. Topic: feeling the RNG in Valkyria Chronicles. The biggest thing I don't like about the much shade cast upon XCOM is the random chance to deal or receive damage. Valkyria Chronicles, on the face of it, does the same thing, but better, with a simple change. When you point your gun at the enemy, there's no percentage chance spreadsheet or similar text adventure decision making. You get a ring and a promise that your shot will land somewhere in that circle. Technically, this is the same as XCOM saying 60% chance to hit, if 60% of your circle is over the enemy, something like that. But it feels so much better. It feels normal to miss, because this is more like you choose the exact shot, you pulled the trigger, it's your shot. You aren't left screaming at your soldier for missing a shot when you didn't have a good grasp of why they would miss, like the XCOM special feeling, basically. And in a lot of cases, RNG plays a smaller role because weapons shoot multiple times, and the RNG is done separately for each shot, and that's massive. Whereas the genre standard would be to do it for each fire command instead, as in your XCOM soldier will shoot 5 times, but you only get 1 hit roll, so a miss is devastating, you lose everything. A Valkyria Chronicles soldier shoots 5 times, and you get 5 hit rolls. So having a 60% chance to hit means in practice you'll do about 60% of your potential damage. It's less unlikely you'll actually miss your attack in its totality and just have to sulk because you wasted a turn. You took a gameplay action that didn't involve any gameplay, you're wasting your real life time. It's just really annoying also in high pressure situations, and breeds save scumming practices for which XCOM is almost proudly famous. Valkyria Chronicles is once again technically giving you the same kind of systems, but it feels better. Usually you can play the game in such a way that you almost always do take 100% chance to hit shots, or shoot enough times that enough hits will go in to get a kill, even with misses along the way. In this way, you can largely eliminate RNG, and treat accuracy as just another constraint in the puzzle aspect of the game, a limitation that forces you to move closer to the enemy, to move into danger zones to get kills. It pulls double duty here with the fact weapons have effective ranges with extreme damage drop-off at the edge of it, which I'll talk about separately in another topic. Overall, it seems I'm saying that the RNG factors cause much less interference in this game than the genre standard, or even that the RNG is being used as a force for good. It's something that you can eliminate through play, and in doing so, the process of eliminating the RNG helps define the game, helps define what a good move is. So, am I even complaining at all here? What's my problem? We'll have to get to this. I always claim that strategy games that don't rely on RNG are quote-unquote real strategy games, because strategy, unfortunately, doesn't really work with randomness. And that's why strategy as a concept unfortunately doesn't work in real life either, by the way. No plan survives contact with the enemy and such. By this I mean that I define strategic depth as how far you can plan ahead. So you say, if I do A, that will mean B, which will mean C, so I'll do D to mean E. Basically, we're drilling straight down to talking about chess here, aren't we? An optimized, computable strategy experience. That's your zero RNG mechanical setup, where you can take the game state and spit out 40 moves of optimal strategy for both sides. Doing a little bit of that as a player can be quite fun, because it's the part of tactical gameplay that feels like progress. You see a move that lets you make another move, and then the fun comes from, I claim, doing A to unlock B, so to speak, and then finding surprising new advantages in B. But if A can fail because RNGesus doesn't love you, it's like, oh, I don't get to do B, or A, or anything, potentially. That's a different kind of game. With its own value, its own style, it's more realistic, like reacting to unpredictable events, having contingency plans, accepting loss. These are things you can ask of the player. However, you will never stop hearing players complain about this, possibly because us players of games aren't really here in games to practice or experience accepting loss. I can do that on my own time perfectly well. I'm here to make progress with a large number of rewardingly tractable problems. And if I execute the solution to a situation, the situation should be solved, and my goals should be advanced. That's why I advocate for this less realistic, more puzzly, more gamey side of strategy. And most of the time, what all this nonsense means in practice is you can't inject RNG to player inputs. If you say clicking here will kill the enemy, then there's no nonsense, it just does. And the game is more about what the consequences of your action will be, not dealing with the possibility that your action will not have a consequence. RNG is only here in the genre as a crutch, because of that 1995 anchor point when we were simulating something the hardware couldn't handle, so we abstracted it away. We just said, we can't make gameplay for attacking the enemy, so we'll just say, 75% of the time, let's just claim that you did it and move on and skip what happens in the middle. And the genre sat there while the world moved on. It turns out there are other mechanical ways to have the player perform an attack, like third-person shooting. You don't need RNG for this. Valkyria Chronicles still has it. It's still a bit annoying, but it's a step in the right direction. Give XCOM a firing cone instead of text-based chances for things to hit, and I will strip 1 million years from its sentence in purgatory. It's that big a deal. However, in Valkyria Chronicles there is one additional RNG factor to shooting other than your firing cone, and possibly two other factors actually, two hidden stats that affect shooting in annoying ways. You probably already know what they are or will have noticed it in the footage if you're watching carefully, but I'm going to come back for the RNG rant part 2 later and deal with that. After Frieza stumbled into the enemy camp and somehow conquered the desert, we discover what the Empire were up to. They're investigating an ancient Valkyria ruin. The Valkyria were the Dark Sun's rivals back in the day of this Dark Sun calamity, but the real twist is just learning they even exist, as plenty of our characters thought they were a fairy tale. It's like thinking, oh, I heard the Romans saved the world from those trousers-wearing beardo Gauls, but that's only a fairy tale, and then you see a suspiciously straight-looking road somewhere in Europe. Wait a minute, the ancient legend! And to clarify, I think the Valkyria were special warriors of the Valkyria people. I originally thought the words Valkyria and Valkyria were being used interchangeably, but it's like saying the Vikings to mean all Danish people in 800 AD, and then saying a Viking to mean a guy breaking down the door of your monastery. It's a specific type of guy that's a member of the wider group of the same name, probably, or maybe all Valkyria and Valkyria are the same, I forget. We also learn that inside the ruin, Prince Maxi and a real Valkyria have found some info claiming that Randgreets, the Gallian capital, possesses a secret weapon from those ancient times. More on that later. Faldio translates some more inscriptions for us, and we learn the Valkyria came and saved the world from the trousers-wearing, black-hair-having Darksun, punishing them for the Darksun calamity by making them a landless underclass from then on. At some point, these Valkyria mysteriously disappeared, as the legend claims, or did they? We'll see about that. Meanwhile, outside the ruin, Rosie's getting even more racist, seeing the scars of the Darksun calamity, and getting mad about it, but this time Isara does actually appear to say that there's no evidence the calamity even happened. Could this scarring have been caused by something else? It's the racist claim versus citation needed, a battle as old as Valkyria versus Darksun, and even if they did do it, do we have to specifically bully Isara about it now, who technically is a different person to the hypothetical perpetrator for the crime in question? The answer to that is, shut up, you have dark hair, your argument is invalid. Largo's like, well, you shouldn't have argued back, this is all your own fault. But all Isara said was, that's a nice argument, Sergeant, now why don't you back it up with the source? It's pretty reasonable. Then Largo's like, well, we shouldn't be squawking, we're gonna get sniped. This will turn out to be the most true thing to come out of this debate a little bit later. Meanwhile, inside the ruin, it turns out Alicia can open the secret door and get to the next chamber. It's a door that only opens to the Valkyria themselves. So what does this mean? Did you look too closely at the opening cutscene and already notice? More on this later. Inside, there are more inscriptions for Faldio to get to work on, but more pressingly, the enemy prince is casually strolling up the stairs, We're not as surprised by this meeting as we could be. It all goes quite well in the end. Alicia notices it's the enemy commander, but hesitates to shoot after his pet orphan, Salvaria, starts glowing blue and wielding a massive spear. We aren't really surprised by this either, but Maximilian says he doesn't want to stain sacred ground by fighting on this staircase, so let's take it outside. This was really a trap, as it turns out, because he's got a massive super tank outside that we somehow didn't notice yet. How's that patrol going, Rosie? Essentially, before we know it, we've all gathered up for an agreed-upon boss battle with Maxi and his massive tank. Thus begins one of the many massive invincible enemy-based gimmick stages in Valkyria Chronicles, where the game rules change up a bit in a way that a first-time player or a doesn't remember what you're meant to do second-time player like me can have trouble with. The first trap, which I think I already knew about, is that you can't damage the tank. I'm sure the game tells you to not even bother. What you can do is fire at its ball turrets, although this requires a certain amount of luck, because the accuracy of your lancers isn't enough to certainly hit them if you commit the command points. The idea is that you'll be able to maneuver around this thing without taking interception fire if you take out the turrets. You also can't stand in certain places with respect to its forward and rear guns, which have massive areas of effect, but will only fire if you stand in their line of sight. So you need to end each turn with the team close on the flanks of the tank or just miles away from it. And yes, we do have Alicia also marauding around in the southeast, where you need to defend your base outside the ruins. Check out this shot with Elise here, firing at the tiny raised profile of one of the turrets from an extreme angle, with that massive aiming circle, and somehow getting the hit. If I remember right, I hit loads of low probability shots in this mission, and the fact I made any progress and didn't die really quickly was largely down to luck. We'll get to my secret belief about how accuracy really works in this game in the RNG rant part 2 at some point later. Incredibly, we're going to stick to what's actually happening for now. As you can see, I half remembered what you're supposed to do. You can climb ladders on the edge of the enemy tank to get up to these radiator blocks with health bars. That's the real target. However, what I didn't remember is that they are also normally invincible. The secret is uncovered when the tank fires to clear some debris. This opens the radiators up, and only then can you damage them. They are ball-shaped, perfect for throwing a grenade into, so that's nice. You can shoot debris to move more of it into the tank's line of advance, to give yourself more chances here. However, I suspect you could just send out a Lancer as a sacrifice in the first turn, to make the tank fire its forward gun, and that might let you destroy the radiators on turn 2. I say send out a Lancer specifically because Lancers have this anti-blast buff that reduces explosive type damage, supposedly to help them against tanks, although remember, tank cannons don't do explosive damage because you don't deserve nice things. It only works against the mortar type tank shots, which glow blue. You might have seen those around. Anyway, after finding the secret, we take out 2 radiators, and we've got the ruins in place to expose the third shortly. But it took like 5 turns to do that, and normally a stage is over after like 2 turns. So yes, my floundering in the first few turns is going to cost me here. But you know what? Those problems pale in comparison to what comes next. Salvaria, the secondary villain of the game as she now is glowing blue once again nearby, and that's going to be an issue. Turns out that the Valkyria didn't really disappear. It's more that their magic powers only manifest in certain situations, and when they're holding special Ragnite lances. Since Salvaria stole one from the ruins just now, she's turned into a Valkyria, a leveled up Valkyria of sorts, causing her to become immortal, and to be able to instantly kill anything. She now appears on the field, and you have to fight her. Hello, difficulty spike. Incredibly, I'm not even going to talk about the topic of invincible enemies right now. Trust me, there'll be other chances to talk about that. Let me get this other thing out of the way first while I struggle. Topic: RNG Part 2, The Dirty Secrets. Here is my conspiracy. There is another even more hidden accuracy stat that's not reflected in the aiming circles. I claim this for 2 reasons. Number 1 is my anecdotal experience, that it seems more likely than not for shots to land in the middle of the circle, even when it's quite large. It's not unusual for games where player actions are tied to RNG to then lie about the RNG, because RNG-based player inputs absolutely suck, and developers know this. If players want RNG, and that's debatable, they want a version where there was a chance for them to fail, but they didn't fail, and that latter part needs to be pretty certain. The classic solutions are double roll RNG or lying about everything. Those are the two favourites. Double roll being where the RNG value is rolled twice, and you take an average, which gives you the quote-unquote expected effect, where players expect an 80% chance event to happen 95% of the time, and double roll provides you with some quick maths in the background that will achieve this for you pretty quickly, without really lying. And then there's just lying, where you say a different number. Or you even do the annoying XCOM technique I always like to cast shade on, where it changes the real values behind the scenes based on how well you're doing, so your 80% chance to hit shot will actually be 100% if you missed your previous shot, like just secretly. Or the enemy will get guaranteed hits on you if you've killed too many of them recently, things like that. An eternal battle with how RNG mechanics can straight up lead to frustrating gameplay, or even just no gameplay if you keep rolling chances for nothing to happen on either side. That's a risk. My second reason for invoking this conspiracy is that I again anecdotally think that when you buff accuracy on units via potentials or orders, it doesn't always reduce the hit circle, instead buffing this other real accuracy stat I allege exists, such that you hit the center of your circle even more. I've no evidence of this is my vague memory and impression only. If anyone actually knows how it works, feel free to conspire in the comments. The other and final RNG topic is evasion. And this is one that's actually real, so that's something. All units do have a hidden stat, hidden because you sinned in a past life, which determines their chance to dodge any incoming attack from an opponent that's in their line of sight. And yes, lines of sight via vision cones is a thing. No, you don't get to see the cones, because you also sinned 2 lives back. Evasion manifests as enemies taking cover when you shoot at them. And it's one of those RNG factors that goes all the way back to the old school uncool, where it's all or nothing, because you expect and even need the all option to happen for gameplay to occur. So when you get the nothing, i.e. you fire and it does no damage because of a hidden random chance roll, it's very frustrating, especially in a game that's all about achieving things with the fewest possible actions. Some actions might not work just because of your past life sins, and you're only left with save scumming to either roll again or try a different approach. I think it would be fine if you could see the evasion stats, because you'd know what you're getting into. You don't know if it's risky to fire into the face of an enemy, because the evasion chance can be anything between 0 and 100% in this case, as it turns out. It's based on class and level, meaning that as the enemy level up, they're more likely to evade damage, or at least one imagines they do because the numbers are never revealed, nor is it technically revealed that the enemy can level up, but they do. And if you want to know why you can't see their level, it's because your spirit once argued that Hitler would disarm Germany after annexing Czechoslovakia. Evasion comes into play big time with named characters, who usually evade more often than not, and it really comes into play with certain 100% chance to evade situations, which I will show you later on. The summation of the whole RNG thing is that the puzzle aspect of the game isn't as tightly woven, because what happens is somewhat random, to say nothing of the AI's behaviour itself. The best you can do is plot a course through these stages that will probably work out and then save scum if it doesn't. However, these concerns only really matter if you are playing the game quote-unquote wrong. That is to say, most run-to-the-flag strategies don't really differ based on RNG factors, so it's fine in the end. Sometimes you have to leave somebody exposed during an enemy turn and pray they don't take damage, and they might not, but other times they'll get headshotted by a tank from across the map. I think RNG hits much better in the game I secretly wish Valkyria Chronicles was, that being a normal wargame, as it stands. It always comes across as frustrating, because it disarms the min-maxy puzzle aspect of playing the game in this unimmersed, systems-thinking kind of way the developers really wanted. But if we were just shooting at each other and taking our time, I guess missing and stuff and strategizing around missing would make more sense. It would be a less deterministic game just by design. Well, I think it might be fine in the end to just remove all the RNG from the game as it stands, even shooting accuracy, and then just see if that makes the depth of planning and execution available in the game more interesting as an experiment. Let's move on. We haven't had too much trouble from Silvaria because my squad is spread out all over the place, and loads of them aren't visible to her. The saving grace in this mission is that Silvaria has strict scripting. She will not hunt you down. She only wants to stand next to the tank. I think she can only kill one of your squad per turn too. The Empire have enough command points to slaughter most of you every turn, and they just don't, to be nice. So yes, it's a very contrived mission by this stage, where the game has to work to undermine its twist of introducing an invincible enemy, because they know it's probably not going to be fun to face them. Just like a game designer realizing their RNG-based input system isn't fun, and adding extra layers to soft remove it. Rant, rant, rant. I was trying some antics with the Edelweiss, and this is barking up the right tree, as simply blocking Silvaria's movement and line of sight gives you a chance that she will not take any actions during the Imperial turn. At least she's tucked away enough that Alicia can run behind the tank and destroy the final radiator. I thought this would be it, but it turns out destroying the radiators just stops the tank being invincible, for some reason. A nice breakage of the established rules where destroying radiators is meant to destroy vehicles. I guess it's the radiators for the gun, not the engine or something. The engine doesn't have a radiator this time. Perhaps now it should appear for true consistency. Instead, you just have to deal loads of anti-tank damage to the thing over time, and hope Silvaria doesn't ruin that process. Because she's not moving, and there are no other enemies, you probably won't actually perma-lose a squad member here. The risk is only that when she first appears and moves into position, she might perma-kill somebody. And I do remember perma-losing a squad member in the trench that Largo and Rosie got annihilated in this run. Handily, the tank moved in such a way that Silvaria ended up unable to see the Lancers I had in a different trench on the south side of the map. So I can run Dallas down to give them all loads of extra rockets. Probably the main use of an engineer. You can make finite ammo weapons infinite, basically. Then I ping away at this thing for a while, and after a whole turn of shooting over and over, we've damaged it enough that Silvaria will go away with Maxi, and our battle with 2 invincible opponents is won. It took a horrible 11 turns, which is still a B rank. And though I did have ideas on how to waste less time, and essentially just do what you're meant to do from the beginning, I didn't want to replay this very long stage. It's hard to get across, but the game has loads of slow, unskippable animations, so long battles are content sparse, effectively. I might riff on this topic later on. But the point is, I didn't want to do that again, and therefore I didn't want to go for the A rank, so we're just not going to do it. The A rank challenge is going very well because I just don't want to do it at the same time. A cutscene plays showing a much cooler battle in which the big tank is gone and we're routing the rest of the Imperial army. Silvaria isn't pressing the attack, she retreats with them and we win the day. Faldio notices though that Silvaria was glowing blue, was invincible, and was wielding weapons of an ancient Valkyria. Could it be she was an ancient Valkyria, known for glowing blue, being invincible, and wielding the weapons of an ancient Valkyria? We'll leave our university-educated archaeologist to deal with this conundrum, because he still doesn't totally believe that Valkyria exist. I don't know, it seems that they do. Welkin and Alicia are willing to believe it, so put that in the chronicle. We've got Valkyria on the field. That's going to be a problem all over the shop, as we'll see. The Battle of the Barriers Wastes is over, and the game says something like, the Empire withdrew, we all went home, but for one reason or another, we're still getting attacked on the way home, and in fact it's none other than the second instance of Artillery Ex Machina. A random explosion sends Welkin and Alicia flying off a cliff. The others are about to save them, yet Largo intervenes, saying they have no choice but to leave them, because of some reason probably, thus forcing our stalwart couple into some kinda, oh, that's a misprint. It was supposed to read, we've got your back, question mark, no, comma, man left behind, ass date. And that is really the only way of putting it. Who wrote these notes? This mission puts us on the map from the scout challenge, and we simply have to run to the end. I said before they didn't use Welkin's special skills after those earlier times, but I forgot about this one. He knows that the bioluminescent flies are probably feeding on dung, meaning more animal trails. Yes, it's the same biological breakthrough as the previous one, maybe that's why I forgot about it. It's also pointless here because the map on the HUD already shows you where to go, with the exception of that secret spot where we got the ZM-Car HG earlier. And speaking of which, Alicia can barely move due to the effects of being hit by artillery and falling off a cliff. We can't cure it with Ragnade, because how dare you ask such things? However, she can still shoot, and that's helpful. And Ty the Immortal here proves marginally less powerful than advertised. I didn't get a very good run at this mission. I kept triggering the searchlights via poor movement, which makes artillery fire at you some more. And it got zoned out of the ideal route, I think. So even with a direct run to the end plus the shortcut, I still got a B rank. I secretly suspect you can just survive getting hit by the artillery and ignore it to go on a faster route. Oh well, another case of I'm too annoyed to actually try that again even though I had an idea of how to do it better. We're going to hand wave this away in our all A ranks challenge and move swiftly on. What was the rest of the squad doing during all of this? Why, they were trying the Stormtrooper challenge again, because killing Ty the Immortal unlocked a new gun for Rosie, so I figured maybe now she can kill an enemy while they run past her. Alicia is out here too, because time is convoluted and the game is very unwilling to commit to its plot points enough to actually impact the player, which is good and bad. It's nice for the stakes to be so fake to some extent. No matter what happens, you can just teleport away and grind to overcome everything. How relaxing. The result of my struggle is the discovery that 2 stormtroopers aren't quite enough to stop the enemy. So we still can't do this. Via the magic of game over, Alicia is unkilled and teleports back to a hidden cottage in the woods, where she has been forced I tell you, to spend the night alone with Welkin. But don't get too excited because Welkin won't make his move outside of the mating season, and moreover, a half-dead Imperial soldier also wanders in. Yes, the game wants to do the classic, oh my god, the enemy were people too, war story thing, for which I am too jaded. If you want to do this game, how about not deliberately portraying them as faceless, voiceless goons? Don't worry, we'll forget about any possible moral crises soon enough, and the guy dies of his wounds because our infinite supply of Ragnade was just really deep in our pockets. We'd have to take our gloves off to reach in there. It's a whole thing, you know. I think we're violating the Geneva Convention by letting a de facto captive die via our negligence. Although because the game is ludo-narratively dissonant, there was nothing we could do, rant. And what the squad was actually doing this whole time was not much. Largo is now in command and accosts Asara for doing tank maintenance. If you get killed, who will drive the tank? He asks. And that's a good question that does actually have an answer. We do have a second tank driver, and no one will enjoy finding out about that. Anyway, Largo orders Asara to go to bed, and overall the dedicated search and rescue operation to find our beloved leader and his beloved Beetle girl doesn't seem to be achieving much, or occurring at all. Back at the hut, after a romantic night beside a corpse, Alicia mentions her family is also dead, and Welkin finally does break out some flirting by saying that our squad is our new family, with him being the dad, Alicia being the mum, Rosie and Asara are the daughters, apparently. I think Rosie is like 28 versus Welkin being 22, plus Asara is also his sister. So we've got some Crusader Kings type of fantasy family going on right here. Before questions of dire importance can be asked, it cuts to reveal that Imperial soldiers are standing right there pointing guns at them. I like to believe the previous conversation took place entirely in this context. Looks like we're busted. We're visited by none other than General Not C, the guy who was the secondary villain or something, I forget, the least important villain. He's impressed that we buried Fritz out here in the woods, and he's all like, wow, why did you bury your enemy? And we're like, because we're all people with families, dude. And it's very revolutionary for all involved, but it's more like because having a corpse in the room was cramping my style. My style with my wife, who gave birth to my sister at the age of 8, as I clearly explained, and we all nod along and decide that the best thing to do is we'll just turn around and walk off and pretend none of this ever happened. This was a disastrous move from the enemy general. I don't remember if he later realizes who Welkin and Alicia were. We'll look out for that later. As for us missing the chance to kill him, it doesn't really matter. We'll kill him by accident, essentially. He's no trouble for us. All of this leads to our next mission. As Welkin and Alicia stumble into Squad 7 while they're attacking an Imperial base nearby. We have to get Welkin to Squad 7 here before you can rush the objective, as there is a barrier that only a tank can destroy. Meaning, as far as I could tell, there isn't some brilliant skip here. Really feels like ignoring Welkin and Alicia and just completing the stage without them would be the play. You can probably destroy the barrier I'm referring to in another way, but I'm gonna do this the normal way like a loser. We'll just plow forward with our troublesome 2 and try to bring them back into the action. I remember struggling with this mission because ultimately your only way forward is directly through all of the enemies. So in our old calculation of which enemies can I avoid, the answer is pretty much none of them. And then the question of which enemies can I get shot by safely is going to be a very hit and miss, trial and error, love and marriage affair. One thing that muddies the waters of how much damage you'll risk by just running at the enemy is the underrated issue of stat-changing damage, on which I will now speculate wildly. Topic: stat-changing weapons are overpowered, but no one noticed because the game's communication of damage calculations is trash, I anecdotally claim. So the root of this one is I think weapons that inflict debuffs actually do a lot more than it says they do, although you have to get very lucky for the game to say what they do in the first place. In particular, the example you most commonly see is Imperial shots inflicting defense down debuffs, shots from their scouts. I don't know why I know this, but I think somewhere, somehow, you can find out the debuff is 50%. That might have been from outside the game, so I don't want to give the game too much credit where it might not be due. But the real issue is what this 50% I'm invoking would mean, because defense isn't a player-facing mechanic, nor is the enemy's damage, although you're still expected to work with them. What I will generously assume is that you have a defense number that's invisible, the enemy have an attack number that's almost invisible, you can see it on their captured weapons, and then damage is just attack minus defense, rounded up to 1 if it's 0 or below. You might think 50% less defense means you'll take 50% more damage, or some other naive guess like that, yet in actuality the effect will be complicated and depend on the numbers involved. So say you have 8 defense and you get shot by a 10 damage bullet, that's 2 damage, but if defense is down 50%, it's 10 versus 4 equals 6 damage, i.e. a 50% defense down status left you taking 200% extra damage in that situation because of maths, and that's a pretty big change. I put it to you that from my anecdotal experience, getting a defense down debuff massively reduces your ability to advance, and I think these numbers are the reason. Sometimes it won't do much, sometimes it's triple damage, and all because these numbers are hidden, you just have to speculate, it's hard to say anything for sure. And that right there doesn't sound like a good setup for a nerdy, turn count optimizing puzzle strategy game, I say. When you consider that debuff weapons only have marginally less damage than regular ones, like 10% less at most, they are very unbalanced in a hard to truly pin down sort of way, I claim. So why don't I use them then, you might reply. The answer is that only rifles give the defense down debuff, and for rifle slots, I'd rather use A, the ZM weapons, or B, just not bother opening a menu to select a different weapon, because I don't really plan to ever shoot with most of the squad members for the whole game. You can get other debuffs, like attack down with stormtrooper shots for example, but these ones are way less important. This is primarily because the defense debuff matters the moment you apply it, and others don't. In a real example, you'd fire 5 shots of 30 damage at a 20 defense enemy, say, which I believe is like the real numbers for elite stormtroopers perhaps, and you'll get 10 damage on shot 1, then 20 damage for shots 2 to 5, upping your damage from 50 to 90 in total, basically doubling your power immediately, but only with the defense down debuff. Combined with headshots, which also do double to triple damage, something like that, that will kill basically anything with no counterattack in principle. Like, there is a ZMCAR HG equivalent thing built into the game that I'm not using, in other words. Compare that to attack down debuffs, which just make the enemy probably do 1 damage with their counterattacks, e.g. 15 attack versus 20 defense. However, if you're in a situation where you shoot the enemy and they didn't die, then you're playing the game wrong because of the turn count thing, rant. Basically, the debuff weapons are the best if you don't use ace weapons, and sometimes they're probably actually better. But you'd have to open a menu to equip them, and I'm very busy. My answer to this whole conundrum, or this whole design problem of having this mysterious stuff going on, is that debuffs should be on damage dealt and damage taken. That's nice and simple, not the invisible underlying stats that go into some unknown calculation. That will be easier for everyone to work with. Problem solved, assuming there is actually a problem here. Am I actually making this all up? With that risk stronger than ever, let's head back into the action with our newly assured knowledge that getting shot hurts more the second time, and that's a problem. I discovered that while the enemy have a tank blocking the way to the barrier you need the Edelweiss to open up, you can just about drive past the tank and get the barrier down, avoiding many points worth of shooting to get the tank out of the way by killing it. Well anyway, my initial attempt at this mission was foiled, because the Edelweiss does die in 1 hit if hit from the back. We need to not leave any enemy lancers on the field during the enemy turn if we're just going to drive forward as early as possible, so I ended up doing the arguably more fun strategy of systematically killing all the enemies for my next run. It's pretty good actually. I even noticed that the enemy's first tank always drives into a vulnerable position in the enemy's first turn, letting you rear attack it with a lancer positioned in the tiny offshoot from the main route on the south edge. I also utilize a couple of mechanics that I should show off here. One of them is that if you bring up engineers, not only are they at least okay in combat, they can repair defenses, which then give you gigantic like 2x defense buffs, leading to 10x less damage because of the numbers. My goal is to keep people watching the back of the Edelweiss closely to avoid a lancer cheekily running around it. But we don't really need that because I'm being so careful to kill all the enemies. And I'm using the support fire mechanic, the other trick I wanted to mention. If you shoot an enemy that's in range of an ally, that ally also shoots. If you're hearing that and maybe have played a few turn-based strategy games, you might be realizing how insanely powerful getting an extra shot like this can be, and then you might be thinking, why not do this all the time? It's a good question, and really the only answer is that when you're doing rush-heavy tactics, it's really rare for you to have 2 soldiers standing near each other, so we just haven't really seen it. But yes, it's very powerful, and we'll see a case later where it's essential for a certain strat. I think if you're playing more casually, and playing without overpowered weapons I should add, being able to access this free source of massive extra damage with no CP cost is probably very fun and rewarding and puzzle strategy-ish to do. It's like a mechanic from a real squad-based tactics game. It rewards close squad cooperation and carefully advancing with fire and maneuver. The enemy can do it to you too, although the AI isn't programmed to notice it can do it, so it does it by accident essentially. In practice, this only happened to me like 3 times in the entire campaign. Anyway, there's this amazing technique here, and a technique from a better game that I'm not using, and that's a shame. In this mission, with me taking a more systematic approach however, I ended up using it, and it was great. Like, it was revealing here a more fun playstyle that just isn't coming up for the rest of the footage, as you might have noticed, and I don't like that. I'm so close to a break point here in my strategy, I can almost take out the wall and the tank at the same time with the Edelweiss, which would let me start running infantry through to finish the mission ASAP, but it doesn't really matter here. I've already used up all of my 3rd turn to get here, thanks to my dedication to killing everything. But yes, marginally better movement on the tank, plus leaving a few non-lancers alive, would be enough to get to the end goal in turn 3, with a scout run I suspect. Turn 4 completion means B rank. Having killed off all the enemies means absolutely nothing. I failed. This is more of a legitimate failure of my A rank challenge. I'm just not going to try again, even though I think I had the A rank strategy worked out by then, because again it takes a while. And aside from animations making battles last a long time, it's hard to actually reload your save, and you're only allowed 1 save slot, so you have to give up progress to reattempt something. And you can't replay a story mission to get a better rating natively. You're not supposed to be doing this. Unfortunately, that sucks really hard. Just let me do it, game. You already broke the immersion for the skirmish system, which works in the way I'm suggesting. Don't have a rating system be at the center of the game's feedback to you if you don't want to support players trying to improve their rating. What a flub, it's got to be said. So there's yet more excuses for not bothering to do that mission again. Let's just pretend I got the A rank. I gave you an idea of how I might try and get it, and that'll just have to do. We've only missed like 3 out of 10 A ranks so far on the all A ranks challenge. It's going perfectly. Anyway, we captured some random woodland location, and we're all reunited. Asara has this weird Sundara thing where she's avoiding saying hello to Welkin. I'm too much of a Western barbarian to understand this behavior, I don't know what's going on. And then Rosie also does this Sundara thing, only with racial slurs thrown in. Ah, it's good to be home. Alicia tries to flirt with Welkin, and he's like, and says nothing. And now we're all whisked away into Chapter 9, where Welkin has been invited to a royal banquet as a special guest, seeing that his knowledge of where animals poop appears to be winning the entire war. Good to see the game noticing we are the protagonist and recognizing our achievements. Although Faldio also got invited, so maybe not, who knows what he did. Presumably there is a parallel, Valkyria Chronicles, following the adventures of Squad 4 or whatever it is, and their wacky antics. I think VC4 does actually take place in parallel with VC1, showing what the regular army is doing, so there's a bit of that. Remember, we're the militia, a different army, where insubordination is welcomed and you have to buy your own guns. Rant, rant, rant. Anyway, this whole thing is actually about Gallia making an alliance with the Federation, the other big faction in the world, who pretty much go unmentioned outside of this chapter. They supposedly are also in a way bigger war with the Empire, so we're kind of fighting alongside them right now, but not really, I guess. Faldio doesn't like this whole thing one bit, because the Federation also is trying to take over the world, same as the Empire, and Gallia is now likely to get drawn into their grander war plans for the tenuous promise of guaranteed independence, violating our official neutrality and thus probably giving the Empire casus belli to invade us even harder. It's all a little stinky, and Faldio ends up storming out. Welkin, our so-called hero, has no thoughts on the matter whatsoever. You know, I'm liking the sound of Valkyria Chronicles more and more. He's the hero Gallia needs right now. It's all stinkier than we could possibly imagine, as the Federation delegation actually kidnaps the Gallian queen. It seems they aren't going to let Gallia stay independent, for reasons I will mention in a second actually. The point is, since Varrot and Welkin are hanging around, they'll be the ones to lead the mission to rescue the queen. The scene is interrupted by a moderately unrelated scene, where we see Asara and the loser mechanics from HQ talking about making an airplane, a notably absent bit of tech for 1935. This scene is only here because we need to Chekhov's gun the existence of aircraft for an outrageous plot point that comes up way towards the end, or at the very end. And I guess here was where they decided to slap this establishing scene for whatever reason. So remember this happened for like 10 hours time, we'll come back to this. At first I wanted to say that they could have made aircraft a special mechanic that Gallia invents, so only the player gets to use it. It could be something in the game. I would quip, should have made a game out of that. But actually I'd rather they just cut the scene that requires the plane and then cut this one as well. It's all leading up to this nerd rage bait, so more on this later. We then return to the action for perhaps the most combat puzzly of the stages, where we have this grid of streets and need to stop a moving car, with the caveat that the car's route is based on which streets you block with the Edelweiss. Plus you must disable the car with small arms, no anti-vehicle things. This can be done as regular weapons damage vehicles a bit if you shoot the radiator. In fact, the ZM submachine gun that Rosie carries has massive anti-vehicle damage. Loads of the captured weapons you have high anti-vehicle damage, which usually doesn't help at all. But now and again it comes in extremely useful, such as in this mission, and in some exploitative antics I'll show you later. Basically what happens in this mission is I stumbled around, not knowing the routes or where the enemies were, but with the firepower of Rosie, and of course the ZM Car 8G, I ended up taking out the vehicle quite easily and getting the A rank pretty much by accident. I don't know how I did it. So while I somehow achieved this, I wanted to talk about something I think the plot should mention more, because I'm a world-building nerd. Topic: the Ragnite Crisis. Why might the Federation want to instantly betray Gallia? It's because Gallia has loads of this precious Ragnite, something that doesn't go mentioned here, and it's almost a forgotten plot point by now. In the very beginning of the game, it says that this war is over the control of Ragnite, and that the known supply of Ragnite will run out in something like 10 years. That is the Ragnite Crisis that stirred up the war between the empires. Ragnite is so ridiculously useful, and everyone needs it. The last group holding the last drops will conquer everything. It's the centerpiece of the endgame of civilization we're living through. And that was the actual point I wanted to raise. If Ragnite will run out in 10 years, isn't everyone absolutely and completely screwed? It's mentioned somewhere in the game that even lights run on Ragnite. I don't know if these losers know how to generate electricity, and after the tragic death of the Brule windmill back at the start, we're even further from realizing alternative power sources. So yes, for a loser, a doomer like me, I look at this scenario and I think, who even cares what government does what? Because won't civilization collapse, even if we win? The game should be about finding a way to live without Ragnite. Or maybe the Valkyria have a secret way to generate more. Or maybe the oppressed Darksons really do have secret powers, and now they use them to save the world from a very boring famine caused by deindustrializing the agricultural sector-based apocalypse. Yes, it's yet another off-ED commentary where I bravely stand up and ask, what about industrial phosphate distribution? We can't run tractors without Ragnite, we can't transport crops without Ragnite. What are we going to use? A horse or something? Haven't seen a horse in this world yet. Your natural dichotomy here would be that one faction wants to solve the crisis by using the Darkson as slaves, like in the good old Valkyria days. Then our heroes, Welkin and Feldio, use their biology and archaeology skills to somehow discover ancient secrets about Valkyria magic. The ancient Valkyria might have missed something that only modern people now know about, so we can finally complete the Ragnite technological revolution understanding thing, and a new technological boom will come up which not only saves the economy, but proves we have surpassed the Valkyria. The Valkyria weren't demigods to be looked up to that we had to try and emulate, which is what the Slaver faction would probably believe. That would line up with some more like World War II stuff, of course. No, the Valkyria can be surpassed. It was the weakness of our ancestors that drove them to enslave and discriminate. We now know better than them. We are better than them. We can create a dream world where it turns out that Super Ragnite falls from the sky. If only you harness the power of friendship, or whatever it's gonna be. And yes, the whole thing obviously becomes a real-world analogy for the economics of oil usage, even more so than it already is, which it appears to be. It's a story about how transitioning to renewable energy reduces the need for war and competition, perhaps creating a world where poor old Asara can be a successful military engineer without being called a dark hair by her NCO every 5 seconds. Well, I forgot what I was talking about. Let's see what happens next in the game. We have a chat with the rescued queen, and she's not very shaken by the whole affair, saying she had a responsibility to lay down her life for Gallia and such. Then Welkin steps in with this anti-hero speech where he explains it's more important to follow your natural instinct to procreate, and so you shouldn't worry about laying down your life for the nation, because you need to personally survive longer to have more children. This could be interpreted as flirting, but more so, it's a very subversive thing to say in a game with unspoken nationalist politics, because Welkin's creed here implies he doesn't believe anyone should fight for Gallia, even its leaders. It's too risky. As usual, that's not what they're going for, but that's my interpretation. I think they wanted the Queen to loosen up, thanks to Welkin's casual charm. But Welkin doesn't have any casual charm, so it ends up with him saying defeatist and insubordinate things that would probably have one executed in a real 1935 wartime environment. It also allows budding losers like me to begin writing a Welkin was an agent of the Empire the whole time plotline, because he's undermining the royal family's will to continue the war. Was Alicia right in the very beginning when she had that gut feeling that Welkin was a spy? Again, that's not at all what they were going for, but that won't stop me going for it. And with the ever-present off-ED subversive rewrite getting yet another annoying plot point to use, we carry on. In the real story, the whole affair was swept under the rug to avoid souring relations with the Federation. Feldio is hanging around pointing out this nonsense, and Welkin doesn't really care. After all, he was granted the Medal of Honor for saving the Queen. even though it was Rosie and Frisia that did it. It's good to be lieutenant. Perhaps a promotion to captain is in order. Unfortunately not, although we now can go and see the Queen whenever we like. She will dole out medals and sometimes special royal weapons with disappointing stats. This is the achievement system basically. So I got some right away for getting wounded and killing an enemy officer, and we'll harvest a load more as we go on. I believe one of them can only be achieved if you get all of the A ranks, but like for real and stuff, so that missing medal will stand as a testament to my wavering dedication in this challenge run. Right, enough nonsense, back to racism. We need to retake Fusen, a city with a major Ragnite mine in the northwest of the country, the twist being that the Empire has been rounding up Darkson and concentrating them near Fusen in some sort of camp. And yes, the game is going here. Rosie is outraged at the prospect of working with pro-Gallia Darkson in this camp, and hopes the Antas Untermensch as our resident punching bag Isara. Isara notes that the Darkson aren't all the same. Rosie's like, pretty sure they are, and Largo's like, shut up, we'll work with the Untermensch if that's the order. And Welkin says nothing, observing yet another little family argument that has been successfully resolved with no hard feelings. Does Isara have any opinion on the fact that Welkin could order the NCOs to stop referring to her by a racial slur, but never does? Probably not. Isara has no fight left in her, even at age 16. Clearly the people of Brule also treated her like this. And so, with the probability that this concentration camp was actually set up by Gallia, and we're now desperately claiming it was the Empire's doing, increasing very rapidly, let's go liberate that Ragnite and the slaves in that order. This is another non-standard stage, because your initial goal is to get Welkin to the concentration camp entrance. This means it becomes one of the Edelweiss mandatory missions, similar to the previous one, where the defining factor to your low turn count plans will be dealing with the slow movement and high cost of taking turns with the Edelweiss. The first areas you pass through are filled with snipers and stormtroopers, anti-infantry things that the Edelweiss can clear out just fine. So why am I advancing with infantry anyway? Because I had correctly predicted that this pattern would not last forever. For this one, you need to be able to bring at least one engineer to follow the Edelweiss, which means getting rid of some of the snipers to make that easier. The Edelweiss will get pounded, first by a tank, which blocks your route, and also by lancers you'll face after the first area. Your engineer can heal your tank each turn, allowing you to tank everything, and avoid needing to spend 10,000 years having your own lancer move very slowly up to clear the tank on the bridge, which would then allow you to send everything else forward to clear out the lancers and you'd be fine. In other words, the fact my engineer just got hit by a mortar shell because I wasn't paying attention is a problem. I retried the stage, rushing forward with the Alicia Frisa Dream Team to clear the way. However, this time, my amazing interception fire position with Frisia drew the attention of the enemy tank and got me tank sniped. Then two stormtroopers move up and could easily go on to kill Dallas, the engineer, yet they don't. Even though they had loads of spare command points, the game's AI is sometimes dynamic, sometimes scripted, and I believe that's just an instance where the script says, move here in the first turn. And they don't react any further than that. Once all the scripted moves are done, the AI will sometimes give up its remaining CP, although unspent CP accumulates, so this is less of a weakness than you might think. Anyway, it was still bad enough for me to try again, and this time I got Alicia really far down the map, causing her to draw the tank's ire. She gets hit, then someone finishes her off. Still, that's good enough because the stormtrooper didn't go towards the engineer, so let's advance. The problem? We now can't see the tank because Alicia had our line of sight on it. But we know roughly where it is, so I have Welkin pop a shot at nothing, and sure enough, there is a tank right there. Then I tried to make a Hail Mary 5 command point move to finish the tank off. You can quote-unquote cast Demolition Boost, a special order that gives 1 unit extra anti-vehicle attack. How much more? Oh, you poor innocent child, be gone. It does something, okay? And this was me finding out that it doesn't do enough. It's better to fire twice for 4 points than to fire once at 75% extra damage for 5. It's something like that. So many of the orders you have are disappointing. I'll save talking about orders overall for later, because we'll see some of them are far from disappointing. You might even say they ruin the entire game in a certain way, so hold this thought. With the tank out of the way, we can advance safely. Frisia comes up to clear out a hidden lancer, then turns to face off against an enemy base to the north. This is where carrying the ZMKHG makes a real cheesy difference, because I can defeat the stormtroopers from the front by shooting them from outside of their range. It's not really supposed to be possible, although you can do this over several turns with a regular rifle. Then we run into the enemy base and use their own cover to survive their attack against us, and my counterattack is so powerful that it one round kills an enemy ace who also has a cover bonus. Again, that's not really supposed to be possible in the normal balancing of the game, so we're gaining serious advantages here. It's pretty dirty, but if it's wrong, why does it feel so good? A question humanity has wrestled with for aeons indeed. Looks like we're clear to drive to the objective now, yet if Welkin was to randomly shoot down the next bridge, he would indeed discover that somehow an invisible tank is right there. There's a tank and 2 lancers on the final bridge, probably enough to kill the Edelweiss if you give them a turn. So you need to hit this last part sufficiently hard with enough of your turn to reduce the risk. This is where having slowly worked up the whole squad would be really cool. We could use snipers and lancers to safely advance, yet the squad is all standing in the spawn zone in the corner of the map, because we are cursed to seek validation from the game by playing as quickly as possible. Fortunately, there is a cool way to do this. First, we use this tram to teleport Frisia into the final section of the map, bypassing the bridge. The Edelweiss will plug away at the tank until the way is clear. Then Frisia can shoot from a ridge at the back to sneakily kill one of the 2 lancers. Still, this is very dangerous, as the lancer I didn't kill might walk behind the Edelweiss and one-shot it, and Frisia can just be shot and then perma-killed by the enemy standing right next to her. Yet, when the enemy sniper puts a gun basically to Frisia's head and pulls the trigger, she dodges it because RNGesus loves me, allowing her to kill the sniper right back. The Lancer doesn't move and fires his rockets right into the front armor of the Edelweiss, not doing much. This is because the Edelweiss is so close that the AI knows it will face interception fire from the front machine gun if it moves, and even though it would almost certainly survive the movement to the rear of the tank, it is programmed to avoid most interception fire sometimes. I think this is another scripted move versus dynamic move thing. Here, scripted moves are allowed to run through interception fire, and dynamic ones always stop at the edge of interception range, or will avoid movement if they're already in range when they start their turn. So Frisia gets shot a load of times, and somehow barely takes any damage because scouts are OP, I guess. The main point is that Welkin isn't blocked off by that enemy tank anymore, so we can ignore everything else and drive to the end, bish bash, and indeed bosh. What a cheap feeling win that was, with Frisia soloing most of the stage. But it's also fun, gotta give it that. I'm paralysed by the thought that without the ZMKHG, we would be facing Frisia possibly perma-dead and at least 1 extra turn to deploy new units through that northern base before we pushed on to the end. With my victory cheapened by such thoughts, we've reached the concentration camp, and perhaps it's finally time for a scene where Rosie doesn't immediately start rat-a-tatting out the racial slurs. After a brief delay in which Welkin sprints back to the capital to be awarded the Order of the Holy Lance, whatever that is, we return to the Darkson camp, and with me still continuing to hold off on my claims that this isn't supposed to be a World War II analogy, we see that everyone is living in misery, and we meet a kid whose parents were tortured to death. Do you see what they're going for here? This is what the racist Rosie arc was all about. She can now experience some empathy. The cruel whims of our evolutionary past made our brains interpret other people's misery as cause for our own misery, which has long been a thorn in the side of humanity's discriminatory ambitions. Zaka actually bothers to try and confront Rosie, saying that humans are like music. There's all different kinds, and that's alright, I guess. Which Welkin also adds to by saying there are many kinds of insects, which is very close to being like, the Darkson are cockroaches, sure, but cockroaches are a highly interesting species. So maybe it's all okay for people to have dark hair sometimes. We'll see if Rosie takes this message to heart. In the meantime, we gotta blow some stuff up. For some reason, the only thing stopping us retaking Fusen is an armoured train that spends most of the day sitting on a bridge. Blow the bridge, destroy the train, and then the army can probably sort the rest out. That's the mission. In practice, it's another run to the end mission, same as a capture the flag objective. As you need to reach a certain place, then shoot a thing to trigger the bomb. The twist is that most of the routes through the map start off closed. so you have to go via a long route to unlock doors. I was moderately confused by this at first. I think it didn't actually say how to open the doors or that they were locked, so I was wasting time running up to the buttons and dithering about. I learned 2 important lessons. One is that the train will shoot your spawn point, so you might as well not bring the soldiers you don't need to use. Bringing a full deployment is optional. I think that's Dallas there getting blown up once again. The war is going poorly for her. And more importantly, I learned you have to reach a certain point in the main path before our Darkson agent, Zaka, one of the 7 billion characters voiced by Steve Blum in this game, tells you about activating these generators to power up the doors. The doors will be one way only the first time you use them because of this, so I don't think there is a shortcut, although I secretly wondered 2 things in this mission. Can you somehow shoot the bomb from the spawn point, or any other place in the map? And can you aggro the enemy to activate the generators somehow? Probably no to both, but there's my exploit dream. Now I was foolishly bringing out the Edelweiss because the bridge in the middle of the map you need to cross is once again blocked by a tank. So I thought I would do the same thing as in the previous mission to avoid having to bring up a Lancer. There are certainly other ways to avoid using a Lancer though. And one is hinted at right here. Alicia, armed with the ZM-Car HG, can destroy a tank. Here we had the advantage of taking an elevator to a location that's already perfect to take the shot, avoiding any interception fire. Is there a way to get to this location against any tank, despite the interception fire? Yes, there is, but I was too naive. We'll see the true power of what I'm hinting at later. For now, I had this vague notion that I was supposed to do something in this top left corner of the map. And indeed, there is a bridge here marked as an enemy. After much pondering, I fired a rifle grenade at it. This not only prevents enemies entering the map from this direction, it is required to make the bomb spawn, so there you have it, now it really is a run to the end challenge. The problem is, I'm taking this way too seriously. As I said, I wanted to bring the Edelweiss down for a tank battle on the bridge, so first I've got Dallas out there clearing anti-vehicle mines out of the way. We also have to blow up the tank traps. Really, this is a massively wasteful approach. And I would say I don't know why I went for this, but I've got 2 reasons. One is that I hate lances, and 2 is that I didn't realise how viable crossing the bridge without destroying the tank really is. Then, after all that time wasting, I did what I should have done before, use the Caution Order. This is a magical spell that lets you take less damage from interception fire. While it doesn't say how much or anything like that of course, the as it turns out answer to any such question is, it makes a massive difference. So massive that it's kind of possible to quote-unquote kill every enemy on the map at once by simply casting a spell that makes their bullets bounce off you. That's effectively killing them, since all we need to do is run past them anyway. The true path to mastery in Valkyria Chronicles is down this route. I think we're witnessing my realization that yes, you can attack a tank in a choke point head-on using your weak scouting troops, and yes, you will even destroy the tank if you do that. This is partially due to the ZM-Car's overpowered abilities, of course. But even without that, you can do something even more useful. You could just ignore the tank and run to the end, aka the actual objective. I was once again distracted to a large degree, and used a load of actions to kill enemies and look around. I guess I just didn't really know the stage or what was ahead. I was being cautious and trying to bring loads of units along with me, carefully securing positions, having that fun I referenced before. I can only apologise for my lapse in sweatiness here. I was a fool. A lot of what I'm doing here isn't relevant. Here's what happens, by the way, if you run around near tanks without casting your spells first. Sorry, Alicia. Don't know what I was doing there. Well, it doesn't matter, because Rosie is already milling about the objective. Don't know why I was hesitant to actually do it. Let's just do it now. We shoot the thing. The enemy general, that guy we met in the woods, screams about his invincible precious train as it falls into a lake. And with that we learn the Imperials now just fled the entire city presumed to exist off-screen, and we've won. We'll capture this place. There's just one problem. Cliffhanger! To be continued from exactly here in part 2, because this video is too long. It's probably linked in the description or something, just in case. Join me over there for more drama, more cope planing, and of course the most famous scene in the game is coming up, don't want to miss that. Go watch part 2 right now.